The morning sun was shining through the school windows. The boy was wiping the board and looked questioningly at the girl sitting behind him. It was Shindo. He had forgotten the name of the second girl, but he remembered that her name was Hakazaki. They were rarely seen together, although he didn't care. And this is the beginning of their adventures. The students bowed to the teacher, and he turned to Yotsu and asked him to come over for a minute. The student hesitated to choose his future, although he could run fast. The teacher suggested joining the track and field club before the national school competitions. This would help him enter high school. The teacher was concerned about the student's hobby. He admitted that none of the activities particularly interested him, dreaming of returning to the online game as soon as possible. He was not interested in the choice of school. The teacher took it calmly. The teacher advised Yotsu to be honest and friendly, foreseeing the difficulties of high school. Despite realizing the teacher was right, the boy preferred a simple nearby school, remaining true to his usual way of life. The bell rang. Yotsu hurriedly finished cleaning, dreaming of getting to the raid on time. Wiping the board, he thought again about the rare trio of girls, especially the admiring Shindo, whose photo he recently saw in a magazine. She seemed to be born to work as a model. Although it is surprising, she was still beautiful. He thought that their worlds were different. A guy like him had no hope. And about Hakazaki, all he knew was that she had some health problems. The guy finished with the board and turned to the girls with a smile, saying that he would soon close the class. The girls were not there. He did not even understand when they left. He was very surprised. The classroom was empty, the clock was ticking, the boy exhaled. A picture of a strange world appeared before him. He did not understand what was happening. Yotsu was in shock. He heard a voice and turned around. There was a female voice who was happy about the appearance of a man. The girl said his name, and the guy said the girl's name and again forgot the name of the second. Shindo said that the half-faced man would appear now, and the first thing he needed to do was calm down and listen to the man. At that moment, a hand fell on Yotsu's shoulder with the words, "This is our first meeting. Let's get acquainted." The man said he was a game master. In the future, he would be able to get to know him better. The guy turned around with a scream. There was a naked man. He said that they would start by explaining the rules of the game. Yotsu was explaining the newcomer the task to help the elder in 14 days in a dangerous region. Shindo stopped the guy, asking him to listen to the instructions to the end. Shindo angrily asked again to let him finish, and swinging her foot hit him in the buns. The guy was surprised that it didn't hurt at all. However, they had no reason to worry, because until your entire group disappeared, they would truly live. In addition, each of them would have 30 seconds, after which they would be resurrected. There will be 8 more phases ahead of them before completion. Each phase will be supplemented by the first participant. The final quest will be completed by a group of 10 people. Later, he could ask his companions about the rewards for each phase. Wind Mage Shindo Iu, Swordsman Warrior Hakazaki Kyusu. The fate of Yotsui's class depended on the roulette. Warriors and mages were the most common classes, robbers and hunters were the least common, and the rest had a minimal chance. The guy was used to seeing this on TV. The girls prayed for the guy to get a warrior, but he didn't understand why they were fixated on the warrior. The wheel stopped and the most unexpected thing fell out: a farmer. The interlocutor disappeared, leaving a window with the hero's characteristics. Health 150%, body 200%, legs 204%, durability 114%, endurance 154%. Skill: recognizing edible plants. Yotsu looked at Shindo with confusion. She was upset and suggested that they talk on the way. At the same time, she wanted to know what kind of weapon he had. The guy asked again, and she said that he could check by squinting his eyes. He did what he was told and saw a scythe. The controls were like on a smartphone. You can just drag and drop. Yotsu looked at him. He had a scythe and a hoe. He realized that he was really a farmer. In the end, he chose the scythe. He can't use other objects as weapons. He summoned her and she was tiny. And so their adventures began. Yotsu ran at the goblins with a scythe, and at the first blow it broke. He reminded them that he also had a hoe, but it also broke. They sat by the fire in silence. Hakazaki sat crying. Shindo tried to calm her down. Yotsu said that it was not his fault. After all, he died because his weapon was complete crap. The guy became interested in what the rewards were at the end of each phase. Shindo said that he was given the right to ask the game master a question. After the first phase, she asked him why he chose her. The answer was that someone who knows her asked the master. Hakazaki said that after the second phase, she became curious about who he was. He replied that he was a man from the future. Yotsu was surprised and repeated the questions asked. The hero, thinking, became the first duty officer with the consent of his girlfriends. The new reality was frightening. He took a broken hoe, feeling like a stranger. The hero's characteristics are expressed as percentages. Having reached the threshold, he activates special skills. The farmer is weaker than the fighter and the magician, but gains experience faster. But despite Hakazaki's good stats, in reality she is very weak. In their world, she can't even go to the gym. He couldn't shake the feeling that this game would end very soon. Walking along the path, he noticed something. It was a recording point. It sometimes records events that happen near it. If he touched it, he saw girls talking to each other. Shindo was talking about the next phase and asking the second girl who she wanted to invite. She wanted to invite Yamada. He was the guy who won the nationals in judo. But the girl meant the one Hakazaki liked. As it turned out, the girl disliked all the guys. Because they are stupid and cruel, and their conversations are about personal topics. Shindo said that if it were her, she would choose Yatsu. The guy was surprised there were two with that name in their year. The connection started to break down, and the guy started to get angry. The dot disappeared. The guy was now only concerned with one question. Who did she mean? Anyway, there's a 50% chance it was him, two girls and one guy. Maybe they'll tell him in the future. He swung the broken hoe, and after 5 hours he realized it was time to change. He walked through the forest, and approaching the camp, Shindo shouted at him to run. In front of him was a huge beast that was trying to eat the girls. A crunch was heard. In the monster's hand was the body of a girl. Yatsu realized that if he died, everything would be over. He needed to hold out for 30 seconds. He decided to run to the village. He was helpless. He only had a wooden stick. This was not the kind of opponent that could be dealt with a branch. Hakazaki had almost recovered, only her left arm wouldn't budge. Most likely, it was because it had been eaten. Yatsu realized that with Shindo incapacitated and Hakazaki one-armed, it would be difficult to survive. Without attack skills, the only way out was to avoid the monsters and complete the quest on his own. They came to the village, and everyone immediately started shouting. The girl showed them the way to the elder who was waiting for them. There sat an old man who introduced himself as the elder of this village. Their village was attacked by a monster called a troll. He asked for help to remove it. Yatsu realized that it was the same monster they ran away from. The elder showed this troll and once again asked to rid their village of it. He couldn't refuse. He also asked the girl if she had gotten rid of the goblins. The girl said that she had not dealt the decisive blow. Yatsu was irritated. He thought that Hakazaki was useless and asked himself why she survived, since it would have been better if Shindo had stayed with him. He decided to level up, and she really irritated him because she hated guys. Looking at the map, Yatsu tried to avoid the trolls. The level is still unclear, but it is possible to change the class after fully leveling up the current one. He was there, just needed to find a couple of goblins. This forest brought back memories. Every time he started to remember his past, Yatsu smiled. He found what he was looking for. It was a large group of goblins. He approached the goblin from behind and started to knock him to the floor, saying that he preferred to work alone. The guy started to fight with the group of goblins. He hated Tokyo, but he defeated all the goblins, so they were shocked. He hated the people in Tokyo even more. He preferred the forest and nature. The guy grinned evilly. Even if his life was in constant danger, he felt like this world was still 100 times better than that cesspool they called Tokyo. Just when he begins to remember the past, his mind begins to be clouded by hatred and malice. Memories pierced him. He exhaled and lowered his head. He needed to calm down. He had gotten too carried away. He saw level 9 and was surprised, because usually level 8 is the maximum in Japanese games. He was waiting for the moment of his promotion. He really needed an upgrade. The guy could not continue at this pace forever. He needs a sword or something. He wants to become a warrior. He saw that Hakazaki was waiting to be reborn again. He didn't understand what she was doing. Shouldn't she be in the village? He walked up to the cliff and saw the village smoking. The quest was a failure. He couldn't disappear now. And he also didn't know how it happened, but he had to hurry. Hakazaki didn't revive. Yatsu realized this and thought that she was eaten. In that case, if he suffered the same fate, that is, they would disappear for real. He didn't understand where everyone had gone. The guy couldn't find anyone. He was screaming, looking for someone alive. He didn't understand what had happened. A recording dot appeared in front of him, asking for some information. He saw a disgruntled child who was surprised that the hero was so bad with a sword. Hakazaki was nervous. She began to explain to the child that in her world she had always had poor health, so she could not exercise. This was the first time she wielded something so heavy. The child asked again about the world. The girl continued. Every month her parents bought medicine worth 50,000 yen to prevent a relapse. Initially her mother and father wanted 2 children, but there was no longer a chance. However, in this world she could not get sick, but she did not become stronger, so she was left behind again. Always the same, over and over again. The girl began to cry. Since birth she had brought only trouble to the people around her. She would never survive alone. So while she was healthy, she hoped that she could help everyone. The girl asked the child for forgiveness. She just needed to talk because so much had piled up that she didn't know what to do, but she wanted to do everything possible. She will protect everyone no matter what. Yatsu was shocked. Was it really since he was brought to this world? A scream was heard. The boy thought that he only cared about himself. The monster was approaching the village. Hakazaki shouted for the people to save themselves and she would buy them some time. The guy realized that he did this not only in this world but also in his own. The girl shouted at the child to run away. The monster threw the girl back. She crashed into the wall with her back and was very surprised. Hakazaki saw the monster approaching the boy. She tried to protect him but flew into the wall again. She opened the weapon set and selected a shield. The monster broke through the wall, so the girl flew into the house. She was in pain and the monster was already crawling after her. The monster grabbed her by the hand. She asked for help, asked for it from Yotsui. The guy was surprised by this. The monster's roar was heard from behind. He didn't know what to do. He thought he should fight, but he immediately discarded that idea. He decided to run. He couldn't end up here. The monster was too fast. The guy leaned on a stick and jumped. The stick broke and the guy flew up, thinking that this was the end and he was definitely not going to survive. After graduating from junior high, one day they would come back and dig up this time capsule. That was the promise. Everyone agreed. Yatsu said that he would definitely return and the guys would be waiting for him. He was flying through the branches. Suddenly, he remembered the conversation. Shindo was wondering if he had decided what he would do in the future. The guy confirmed and asked the girl in return. She hadn't decided what she wanted to be either, but she was planning to go to Moro Science and Technology High School. Kyusu was planning to go there too. Shindo asked Hakazaki if this was still the case. Shindo dreamed of going to a famous medical school and doing medical research. Yatsu was indifferent to her goals, considering them alien. Until now, Yatsu recalled Shindo's story about his family's illness and medical expenses. His motivation to become a doctor seemed artificial and theatrical to the young man. Meanwhile, the monster successfully attacked, proving its agility. A guy like him in this alien world, he can't afford to just disappear. The monster landed with a thud and the guy ran screaming. Yatsu added Hakazaki to his priority list next to Shindo. Never one to let others take precedence, he dodged the monster's attack. He could predict its movements. Before each attack, the monster prepared to jump, just like a frog. And if he was right, then all he had to do was change direction at the moment of its jump, and it would miss. As long as he was able to run, Yatsu would not lose to him. He ran and thought that he could not stop. The guy was already running out of breath. He was running with his last strength. He dodged again and ran, repeating the actions over and over again. At one point, he turned around and saw the monster flying straight at him. He tried to run away again, but suddenly screamed from the sudden appearance of the troll. He dealt with it instantly and leveled up to the last one. The monster was already trying to grab him, but he stopped. A man from the future appeared, congratulating Yatsu on leveling up, and he was very happy that he was able to, putting everything on the line. It was time to spin the roulette again and change classes. The guy didn't expect this and asked for time to collect his thoughts, but the man had already started spinning the roulette. The guy began to beg for something with a blade, or better yet, for a warrior with a sword. Yatsu received the job of a cook with the following stats: health 140%, body 140%, legs 110%, durability 110%, stamina 115%. Disappointed by the low skill level, he expressed dissatisfaction. He decided to look at his weapon and there was a knife. He was glad that he had a blade. The cook's skill was knowledge of monster anatomy below C rank. The guy looked at the monster and was horrified. After warning of a time reset, the man disappeared. Yatsu plunged his knife into the monster's tough belly, spraying liquid. Blinded by anger, the boy cursed loudly and threatened his opponent. The monster flew away from the guy. The monster woke up and threw the guy away from himself and then fell. Yatsu was happy and even mocked the monster a little. He grabbed his side and turned towards the guy. In his hand, the monster had the parts he ate. The girls began to revive. The guy smiled. He joyfully exclaimed that the girls had returned. It worked. The guy told him to watch him. He knew his attack pattern. The guy yelled at the monster to follow him. Yatsu ran in the opposite direction and explained that they had to change direction the moment he jumped. Shindo countered that moving at that pace was extremely energy-consuming. Even if he could dodge, he could do it one more time, maybe two more times. But the monster began to choke. The girl assumed it was because of the bleeding. The guy said that even despite such a huge body, he is able to jump 20 meters. The skin was too tough, his muscles were like armor. The boy knew that none of them had enough attack power to penetrate the troll's defense. The monster consistently knocked out the heroes, but Yatsu, having risen from the dead, fought stubbornly, gradually adapting. The wounded monster began to howl and the guy finished off the enemy. He was going to penetrate the wound and attack from the inside. Shindo understood. The boy could see the circle that showed the attack radius of the monster. And now, with all his sacrificial determination, he flew into the monster's wound. As planned, he began an attack from the inside. The monster tried to pull the guy out of the wound. But Yotsu managed to inflict a couple more wounds. The monster threw the guy back but could no longer move but continued to fight. Shindo remembered that basic wind magic only allowed the mage to change the flow of air. Because of this, low-level wind mages had almost no offensive ability. However, she inserted the staff into the monster. She summoned the wind. A completely different effect occurs if the spell is cast as injected directly into the target's body, filling it with air. The monster fell lifeless. Yotsu was revived and was frightened by a man with congratulations who announced that the quest was completed. Yotsu wondered why the man always appeared behind him. Hakazaki realized that her levels had suddenly jumped. She was already level 4. Shindo said that magicians' experience growth is quite slow. She also noted sarcastically that farmers and cooks level up too quickly. Her own level went up by 2 and became level 5. Yotsu put his hands on his hips and said, "Yes, that is." His level became 5. The man gave the right to ask a question for completing the quest to Yotsu. The guy again began to say that the man was in too much of a hurry. He started thinking what to ask. There were many thoughts in his head. He thought about who was behind all this, what was the purpose behind sending them to this world, what these people wanted from them. In the end, he decided to ask the question of where they would go during and after the 10th phase, when to complete the quest. The girls were surprised. The man only said that they should enjoy their version of events in their world. They were shown their city in the real world. They dealt with all the monsters except the last one. They dispersed and ran forward towards the dragon. Yotsu opened his eyes. He didn't understand what happened. He came back. The girls didn't understand what happened either. They were fighting with this monster. Time was ticking again. Shindo decided to do some club activities, saying to look at her watch. As it turned out, time stood still while they were in that world. The guy didn't understand anything because they were there for more than 2 days. He wanted to say something, but Shindo took his hand, saying that it would be a few weeks before the 4th phase began. She is still alive and able to join the national competitions in high school. Thanks to him, her sophomore year was not wasted. The guy was embarrassed and remembered that he hadn't been able to participate in the nationals for 3 years. He was still in shock from everything. Shindo said goodbye, saying that it was time for her to go to the club room. She asked Yotsu to make sure that Kyusu got home safely, as it had been unsettled lately. The boy remembered that he was on duty and had to close the class. Finding himself alone with a girl for the first time after school, Yotsu was more nervous than he had been in front of any monster. Afraid of losing the city he hated, he mobilized at full strength. Yotsui walked through the streets of the city thinking about something. His heart was pounding wildly the whole way. Yesterday, for literally 10 minutes, an unknown man transported him to a world reminiscent of medieval Europe. Complete missions with a possible losing outcome. There are still 8 phases to go through. Hakazaki thanked Yotsui for keeping them alive. The boy sighed, remembering the unknown man. He said that now they had the same fate. Yotsu reminded the girl that he had saved them by accident, noticing her lack of understanding. Admitting his dislike for stubbornness and orders, he inquired about the fate of the others and emphasized the need for unity in order to win. Hakazaki looked at the guy in surprise and said that his thoughts sounded reasonable, which meant they were now a team. Shindo sat on the bench near the lockers and texted Kyusu. She told him that she didn't know what he said, but he passed the test. Shindo shared her joy at Yotsui's inspection with her friend, who recalled his quiet nature and his winter transfer to 6th grade, noting the usual impression and her own tension. The friend said that it was too late to mend relations with Yotsui, since they had stopped communicating with each other when they entered middle school. Shindo was surprised by such categoricalness. Shindo was very happy that she had the opportunity to talk to him. She still wonders what kind of person he is. Guys like that have long since died out. It was already quite late. It was dark outside. Yotsui was running around the yards. He was thinking that it was much more convenient to run in the mountains. The concrete irritated him. He had a lot to think about. What kind of world this was, about dreams, about magic, about death and the resurrection of the body. Yotsu thought about the traveler from the future with the head injury. The question arose, did he really come from the future, and is it possible to return back, moving almost at the speed of light? The guy remembered the mysterious man. He thought about his words about enjoying his version of the world. Yotsui thought that it was strange and that it might be a parallel world. Yotsu continued his run and continued to think about the parallel world, because maybe it was with magic, or maybe the magic and the world were virtual. And if so, to what extent were they virtual? Yatsu was experiencing memories. The mysterious man, the adventures with Hakazaki and Shindo. It was unclear how a battle with a dragon-like creature could have happened in his hometown. The boy thought about the fact that he was supposedly fighting to protect the city. He didn't know if this was the future. He wondered why him, because he hated this city. Why did they choose him? Hakazaki in that world is strong and has a high level. Yotsui is level 10 and Hakazaki is about 50th. The guy continued to think. Then they are selected not by physical indicators. Age, that is quite possible, the guy thought, continuing his run. Late in the evening, Yatsu was distracted by an unexpected call from the game master, which caused the guy great surprise. The game master turned to the guy and said that he had a night and half a day. The frightened Yatsu didn't know what to do because now the man was calling him. Well, if you compare it to today's adventure, the guy thought it will be easy. Yatsu asked the game master what had happened and was told that the task was a gift and that success or failure here would affect success in the next quest. The guy was confused by what was happening. He did not understand what task was being discussed, but he was ready and asked what needed to be done. The guy listened attentively to the man, who told him that he was going on a date now. Yatsu did not expect such an answer. He was shocked. In the middle of the night, the guy needed to get to his school. Continuing to talk on the phone with the game master, he asked if he needed to go to the second floor in the second building. The guy had to go to where the light was on. He was surprised because it was a women's restroom. Could his date really be happening here? Entering the women's restroom, Yatsu caught the girls by surprise. One was filming what was happening, two were holding their fallen friend. Everyone turned their gaze to the troublemaker. The guy was shocked by what he saw. He started telling the man everything. The game master told him not to turn around. He said that it was none of his business, then asked if Yatsu would call him later. The girls were watching the guy all this time. The guy turned around and apologized to the girls. He felt very awkward. He thought about the fact that it was his first date in such a place, and here they were making fun of someone. The girl who was filming everything turned the camera on Yotsui and angrily asked him what he was doing and who he was. She said that it was a women's restroom and he wasn't allowed in there. Yatsu noticed that the girl was filming him. He thought that the video of him in the women's toilet might end up on the internet. The guy thought, what if the target of the date is a girl who is being bullied? What could happen because of these photos? Yotsui was very scared, then his mission would fail. Yatsu remembered the game master's instructions to share fate for the success of the quest. Realizing the risks, the boy decided to destroy the phone. Yatsuya suddenly started running straight towards the girl who was filming him. The girl did not expect such an action from the guy. She was very scared. Yatsu abruptly took the phone away from the girl. The angry owner demanded the device back, noticing the deletion of data, but having calmed down, she promised to take the pictures again. Hearing this, Yatsu broke the phone in half. All the girls were shocked by this. The girl who owned the phone was very angry and upset that the guy broke her phone. The guy said that now no one will know and accordingly, this will increase the success of the date. The girl lying on the floor was perplexed. She didn't believe that Yatsuya was saving her. She thought he was strange. The girl whose boyfriend had broken the phone was still sad about what had happened. She said that there were backup copies with addresses, but the functional data could not be restored. She also noted that the phone cost 50,000 yen. Yatsu suddenly remembered the conversation between the girls, about how one of them said that they would need to support someone and everyone agreed. The girl who was left without a phone promised that she would take revenge on the guy for this and that he would pay for it. Yatsui suddenly realized that the other two girls also had phones. The guy quickly walked towards the girls. They said that they did not take any pictures. Not believing their words, the guy snatched the phone from the girl with short hair. She tried to persuade him not to break it and offered to check her phone for photos. Without thinking twice, Yatsui broke the short-haired girl's phone. He said that there might be hidden folders in there. The girl was very upset when she saw her broken phone. The girl who lost her phone first was indignant. She told Yatsu that he was scary and disgusting, and then asked if he understood Japanese. The girl lying on the floor was still shocked by the guy's actions. She asked if he breaks phones to be absolutely sure. Oshi thanked the guy and said that it was still too much. Pleased with himself, Yatsui said that he did everything perfectly, and if he was not mistaken, this was the first time in his life that he had quarreled with girls. Yatsu learned about the second phone and looked around the room. Finding bags near the sink, he assumed there was a phone inside. Quickly running up, the guy pulled the device out of the bag, avoiding the girl's obstacle. He raised the phone up so that no one could snatch it. The girl looked at the guy with a pleading look and asked him not to break the phone, saying that she had nothing to do with it. Yatsu broke his phone again, throwing the pieces on the floor. Happily declaring his chances of a successful date had increased, he narrowly avoided a punch from the angry owner of the device. The girl who struck grabbed her leg. She said it hurt. She didn't understand why it hurt because she kicked him. The girl continued to talk about how he doesn't understand anything and doesn't listen to anyone, that it's a personal matter, that he can cause great harm by later telling her that she's not feeling well. She said that tomorrow or some other time they would do it again. Yatsu turned to her and asked if she could try him or if he was too strong for her, and he thought about how to fight them. The girls ran out of the toilet and ran away. They didn't understand who Yatsu was and said that they ran to call the police. The guy didn't have time to tell them anything and wondered if they would really call the police. The guy started thinking that it was bad, but it wasn't him who committed the crime. But then he remembered that he had no evidence. Returning to the toilet, Yatsu remembered the traces of the crime. Getting rid of the fingerprints, he stomped on the phones, threw them into the toilet and breathed a sigh of relief. Get out of the booth, the guy laughed nervously and said that somehow everything turned out unexpectedly, then suggested that the girl pretend that nothing happened. The girl got to her feet and agreed with this. She thanked Yotsui. Yatsu suggested that the girl leave there. After all, it was a women's restroom, thanking her in return. The guy thought about what to do since they were here together. Yatsu was walking along a dark street with a girl. Both were thinking about their own things. She was wondering if she would take them home. He was wondering about the feeling of being protected. Frightened, the girl asked about her fellow traveler's status, learning that he was from her school. The girl asked Yatsu if the girls were afraid of the consequences of broadcasting the video on the Mikanama platform. After thinking about it, the guy doubted the popularity of the video, to which the interlocutor agreed. The girl walked and thought out loud that soon the boys would start talking about her. It suddenly dawned on her because it was disgusting. The girl blushed and tears appeared in her eyes. She said that at least her name is not known. Yatsu was confused. He didn't know what to do in such a situation. The guy told the girl to ignore them. Yatsu didn't know at all how to calm the crying girl. Yatsu might want to hug her shoulders, but he's not her boyfriend. If he does that, won't he get arrested? The guy decided to just wait. The guy suddenly remembered that the game master hadn't called for a long time, thinking that he had been visiting the scene of the incident frequently. After waiting a bit, Yatsu decided that it was time to ask the girl if everything was okay. Noticing the girl's confusion, Yatsu heard her assurances of feeling well. Deciding to end the evening, the guy invited his companion to continue their journey home. The girl suddenly said that it was like a game about promoting an idol guy, so cool and fashionable. Yatsu didn't understand why she said that and just agreed. The girl started explaining to the guy that besides the main character, there is a girl producer who, in addition to producing, enters into relationships with other guys. Yatsu felt awkward. He did not understand what she was talking about. The girl suddenly started screaming that this was not a game that you could get out of by playing the role of a handsome guy. And this also applied to Yotsui. The guy looked at the girl in bewilderment and thought that she was an otaku through and through. 2 hours later, the game master got in touch. Yatsu was sitting and playing the console. He was thinking that in the end, this puzzle had been solved in a good way. Pictures began to appear before Yatsu's eyes. The guy moved to a parallel world, where Hakazaki and Shindo were already standing in front of him. Yatsu sighed tiredly after greeting the girls. He looked back and saw a shocked familiar girl, perplexed by what was happening. Yatsu thought about the fact that there were already 4 of them and didn't understand why a week ago there were only high school students, which meant that there was something different here. The guy thought about what they should do now. The girl who arrived in another world looked around for the first time. She was scared and didn't understand where she was. She thought it was because she felt uneasy. Turning to the girl, Yatsu also wondered what she was doing here. The game master approached the girl from behind and put his hand on her shoulder, wishing her a good evening. The girl did not expect to see a man in front of her and was very scared. The game master said he was starting to explain today's task. There are changes in the rules. The resurrection time increases from 30 to 40 seconds. In addition, the quest, who is it, what kind of cargo, and where the delivery location is, he does not know. The mission was to walk 5% of the map and deliver the items to Raidadob. The boys were given their professions again. Shindo Iu was a wind mage, Hakazaki Kyusu was a swordsman, and Yotsui Yusuke was a cook. The game master approached the wheel and said that it was time to find out what profession Tatte Yuki would have and began to spin the wheel. The arrow pointed to the profession of a fire mage. Tatte was shocked by what was happening. The game master said goodbye to the guys. Yatsu approached Tatte and asked what she was so scared of. She said that there was no need to be afraid. The girl looked at her new clothes and asked if it was a kidnapping. Tatte suddenly recognized Yatsu and said that she understood everything because 2 weeks ago at school, it was not a chance meeting. The girl thought that the guy was following her. Yatsu began to explain that the girl was mistaken. Then Shindo interrupted him and said that Tatte was mistaken because they were also kidnapped by a man with half a head. After a while, Tatte, having calmed down a little, asked about further events. Shindo recalled the recent incident of saving her Yatsu, refuting Takete's opinion of him as a criminal. Yotsui thought that Shindo was protecting him. He didn't understand why Takate was afraid of him. After all, he saved her. Hakazaki didn't understand why she was afraid of him. She replied that the four of them decided to take a walk around someone else's school, and the guy climbed into the girls' restroom to install a hidden camera there. Yatsu was angry and asked again about the number of people, because if he was not mistaken, there were 3 offenders. The girl confirmed, but at the same time she made peace with them. The guy asked in surprise, "Is that what it is called now?" She didn't understand if it was bad, and she asked him not to interfere in other people's relationships. He asked her to agree that he was not a bad guy. The girl agreed but wanted to think. He took phones from 3 girls and broke their phones, after which he flushed them down the toilet. There is no trust in such a person. It sounded convincing. The girls looked at the guy in surprise, and he asked them to forget everything. The sound made Yatsu turn around. A huge carcass landed nearby, and from it came the rustling sound of an unknown insect breaking out. The insect that crawled out was a centipede. Shindo saw it and was taken aback. It had small balls hanging on its tail. The insect itself began to step on them. The centipede raised its tail and threw the ball at them. Yatsu was surprised to see the ball flying towards him. The ball turned to attack, and it turned out to be a woodlouse. It surrounded the guy's head with its shell. Yatsu disappeared. The girls were shocked. The guy appeared next to the body, realizing that he was not yet available. It was an unexpectedly strong insect. Meanwhile, the centipede launched more balls. Yatsu remembered the cook's ability to identify the names and dangers of enemies. Behind the females were 6 male centipedes. Threat level D. The male rushed towards Shindo, who instantly disappeared. The guy realized that by throwing males she attacks from a long distance, 2 had already disappeared. He couldn't wait for the resurrection. Hakazaki ran away from the centipede, but Takate asked her to trust her. Maybe she didn't know something, but in one moment her whole life flashed before her eyes. And she remembered. 11 years ago, Takate Yuka at 5 years old. Every Sunday morning, she watched an anime series about a magical girl. During her kindergarten days, she dreamed of using magic. She soon became an ordinary otaku, but she still loved the magical girl. She thought, will she see the fulfillment of her childhood dream? And decided to roast him with the flame of the red lotus. She smiled and spent mana. And when she realized it, at a distance of 10 centimeters from the tip of the staff, the temperature warmed up to 24 degrees. She felt warm, and at that very moment a woodlouse flew into her. The girl also disappeared. The boy realized that Yuka had bought time while Kyusu ran into the forest. Insects are not effective there. It was necessary to go there. The guy began to revive, and the body began to disappear. He was reborn. There was a centipede nearby which he picked up, and it curled up. There was a gap in the shell. He took a sword from his weapon reserves and stuck it into the gap in the shell. He started to tear this woodlouse apart, and it disappeared. He wanted to defeat them all. The centipede squeaked. And the guy looked at the 2 parts of the woodlouse, realizing that it was beautiful. Yatsu pondered why saviors become enemies, recalling his lessons on female psychology. Perhaps it was because of his walk home. Then 2 woodlouse attacked him. And he thought that even if it was so, if he had lost trust. At the same time, he was already holding one of the woodlouse in his hands and took out a knife. He wanted to return it, and for Shindo to say that she liked this Yatsu. He was ready to wait a month, 2, and even 3. The boy dealt with another woodlouse. He became serious. And Shindo, as she thought he was mysterious, Takate realized that he was so amazing. Through the cracks in him, power began to creep in. Yatsu wondered if he would hear from Shindo that she liked him or something. What it was he didn't know, some kind of saved recording, probably a video log. The 3rd circle since the beginning of the tasks. Yatsu asked again, and Shindo answered that images appear for a while if you touch this mark. 2 girls appeared hugging each other. Shindo told no one to look. She said in the hologram that it was good to play together with your friend, and Hakazaki didn't understand what that meant. Shindo asked to stay like this for a while and asked if she minded. The girl was crying, and this did not fit with her image of a school queen who was popular with students and teachers. Having decided to deal with the centipede, Yatsu circled around it. Shindo, who had come to her senses, received the order to retreat, realizing the futility of wind magic, and disappeared. Close combat began. He didn't know how to approach her. The centipede uses its jaws and tail as weapons, and its legs were close together. Then he noticed something. It was a poisonous spine, and he was glad that there were no more males. It was a great opportunity until she stuck her tail out. The centipede had a blind spot on her back. She started kicking and pushing the guy off her back. But he understood that the blind spot was a good place, but if he fell, he was finished. He took out a knife and started chopping at the legs. He understood that this was a weak spot and continued. After 10 minutes, there were pieces everywhere, and the centipede was still fighting. The guy was tired that his body was all over the place. Shindo didn't know what to do with her, and the guy suggested using her to raise Hakazaki's level. He realized that she couldn't lift her two-handed sword, and the girl agreed. Tatte didn't understand why he couldn't do it himself. Shindo replied that they couldn't use someone else's weapon. She handed her staff to her. The girl's hand became transparent. She could not hold the staff, and this only confirmed Shindo's words. Yatsu offered to take the weapon by Kyusu's hands. He placed his hands on hers, and they were able to lift the sword. He said on the count of 1 to lower it down. He started counting down 3, 2, 1. Both of their levels went up. Objective: complete 5% of the map and deliver cargo to Raidadab in 39 days 23 hours. Progress: 0.06%. It's better to take new roads. They soon reached the village. It was possible to explore if we walked at a distance from each other. The girls supported it. Shindo wanted to keep a secret. Tatte got nervous and said that the girl was her senpai. The blonde calmed the girl down, saying that everything was fine and that she should not be afraid. Tatte realized that the girl was so cool. Just like Magiha Purple, she is the senpai of the magical girl from the anime series she watches every Sunday. A beauty, slender, the first to start the game, survives, moving towards her goal. Perfection itself, no girl can compare to her. Shindo wondered what she had been arguing about with Yotsui when they got here, since she had made peace in a very strange way. Tatte became nervous, thinking that she wouldn't understand because she didn't know. She hated being the target of criticism, trying to avoid conflicts. However, the situation was getting worse, and Yotsui's intervention only made things worse. Now the girl hoped that something like this would not happen again. Shindo said that it was useless to constantly avoid meeting her classmates. Tatte confirmed this, but she believed that it could have passed her by. Shindo didn't understand why she thought that no one would understand her. The girl replied that no one was laughing at her. Shindo laughed because the girl was half right. The girl believed that appearance, knowledge, and sports help to occupy a high position in society, get joy from studying, and live a full life. Shindo lived separately. Her father and older brother were biker gangsters, so she never had time to be bored. That's why she didn't like those who judge by appearance. Tatte was surprised that she wasn't afraid. Shindo thought that she had no one to help her. The girl immediately refuted her words. She wondered if Shindo wasn't afraid that she would have fewer friends. And Shindo replied that those who turned away were not friends. Tatte was surprised by her coolness. She has more friends anyway. Suddenly the girl asked him to marry her. Shindo laughed, not understanding her request. It was deep night outside. The blonde girl jumped up with fear on her face. She was trying to catch her breath. Yatsu asked her why she couldn't sleep. Shindo asked him what he was doing. The guy answered that he was training to be able to protect them. The girl said that everything was fine and she just had a bad dream. The guy laughed that she couldn't sleep because of the dream. The girl wondered why he had addressed her as you. Yatsu thought that she was embarrassed by this. Shindo asked with a questioning intonation, in what part of her should this embarrass her? This task was one of the most mysterious. The guy with a joking voice asked if they talk about this in their dreams. And the girl with a sad voice said that the brave man makes her remember a terrible dream. This was not what she wanted to hear from him. The guy remembered the recording of the girl crying. The girl was waiting for his version of why she was crying. He told her that there were different reasons, and maybe it was because of a bad dream. Shindo, who was waiting for the guy's revelations, decided to share her personal story, doubting the consequences. What she heard shocked Yatsu, because since childhood she had been called a brat. The thing is, she had Sayuri, her older sister, cool, gentle, graceful, but sometimes ruthless. She loved her sister very much. In the spring, when she became a high school student, Sayuri committed suicide by jumping off a skyscraper. The boy was shocked. The last note from his sister contained 2 reasons, the silenced mockery and the second reason. Poor Sayuri, this won't clear her reputation. She really was a good girl, but this reputation. As sad as it is, there's nothing you can do about your reputation. She turned out to be an excellent model, although the adults did not stop the offenders of the 5-year-old baby. Reputation is implacable. The child was raised to show the ad. The news caused confusion. Primary school brought her constant ridicule, including from teachers. One teacher emphasized her biker background, another complained about the trouble kids were causing her. She asked why they were doing this to her, and they told her that they were helping her. Shindo didn't believe it. The teacher was always angry with her. She asked him not to lie to her. It was then that she realized that only her supporters were friends with her. Her friends respect her for her abilities, but her enemies judge her by first impressions. Having found herself in a new world, the heroine wanted changes. Overcoming difficulties, she achieved fame. She studied, attended clubs, and was published in fashion magazines. And she did it for a long time, wasting time, until all the enemies disappeared and there were more friends. In general, she did it so that no one could say, "What a pity." But then this half-head appeared. It is said death here is equal to death in reality. Lonely, the girl understood the fragility of achievements. She does not want to leave the world. She wanted to have fun. A trained body immediately stood out because every man wanted to be powerful with strong arms. This made them happy. Yatsu wondered why they were chosen. Maybe they missed something important. Maybe it was a mistake. Shindo took his hand, asking to borrow his strength. She asked to protect her, crying. She looked at Yatsu in tears. He didn't know what to answer and was embarrassed. He asked again and didn't want to lie. He wouldn't be able to protect everyone because his level was much lower than the girls. Shindo was surprised. She thought that guys weren't afraid of anything. And Yatsu replied that the boys were also afraid and he was no different from them. The girl offered him another option to be his older sister. The boy thought she was a little crazy. But don't judge by first impressions. He realized that Shindo's biggest enemies were her father and brother. Hakazaki and Tatte were also not sleeping. They were listening to a private conversation. There are 38 days and 19 hours left. The heroes saw an abandoned village destroyed by the winds, empty for more than 5 years. They remembered the previous mission to save the village. The world is populated by animals, plants and insects ordinary and demonic, which players, heroes, fight. People are distinguished by their clothes and neutral behavior. And as in any game, traveling merchants are always happy to meet them. One of them told them about a large city nearby, the state of Kortenla. Task: the remaining time is 36 days 22 hours. The people did not know the heroes and asked to go through the registration procedure, then they could enter. The group was surprised by the library. There they found a man who explained everything to them. The woman asked to look at the map. They were in Kortenl, almost in the center of the continent, and what they were looking for, Raidadab, was in the west of the continent. They realized that without horses they would not make it. The woman realized that they had no money, and without money there were no horses. Yotsui asked about the reward for the heroes. The women answered, "There are many gods, the one savior has different names." The woman added that they would have a martial arts tournament the day after tomorrow. The winner would get 3 horses. Winning the tournament became the boys' primary goal. Yatsu compensated for the lack of strategy by proposing to raise the level, which caused disagreement. The first encounter with humans was an attack by bandits. The system detected excessive self-defense, lowering Yatsu's level. Yatsu told Shindo not to attack so as not to lower the level, ordered to run. But she used wind magic. The group ran into the forest, losing Shindo. She was captured. The boys didn't know what to do and were wondering if they should go and rescue her. Tatte didn't know if there was another plan besides rescue. Yatsu was surprised that Hakazaki didn't tell her that they all had the same fate. In other words, if one person completes the task, the entire team will return to the real world. The well-being of each person during the task is not interconnected. The guy tried to prove that due to the lack of time they were facing a loss, and their percentage of winning was very small. Tatte said angrily that she had recently overheard him telling Iu that he would protect her, and now he didn't want to go save her. She thought he had deceived her, and she also realized that this was the first time she had seen trash like him. Yatsu calmly said that he couldn't go now because of that, but Shindo came first in his life. Taller and in need of protection, Shindo was left alone. For her sake, Yatsu was willing to sacrifice himself sincerely without lies. Hakazaki sadly wondered who Yatsu was. After all, he is ready to sacrifice his life, but he does not want to go and save. He confirmed her words and completely trusted them, but this is not his path. That little phrase, Tatte asked Hakazaki to wait for her, and she said that the guy was lying to them, they were no longer a team, and that was the final blow. Yatsu suggested a division. He goes to the tournament, the girls look for Shindo. Again he was alone. Tatte was perplexed. Hakazaki jokingly advised to decide. After all, there are only 2 of them on their team now. The girl confirmed and asked Kyusu if Iu had revealed her secret to her, since her stormy school activities were due to a bad reputation, thanks to her stupid parents. She thought that ordinary people were disgusting, but Shindo tried to overcome adversity. Kyusu said that thanks to Iu, she started going to school. She was a weak, taciturn child and Shindo helped her. Tatte confirmed that she was cool at school and heard that all the boys were talking about her. She again remembered Yatsu who sent them to save her and they tried to figure out what to do, but nothing came to mind. There were screams, the girls were caught too, and one of the bandits announced it. One of them said to throw them in the same cell. Task: the remaining time is 35 days and 3 hours. The tournament begins. Yatsu prepares for the fight, worried about whether victory will bring horses and whether it will harm his reputation. He took out a knife from his kit and decided to get ready and rushed into battle. Shindo was sad, Tatte was gloating, Hakazaki believed in saving Yatsu with all her might. Was it right for him to separate from the team? The first round of the tournament has started. Saving the girls will not give horses, thought Yatsu. Shindo is offended, Hakazaki believes in salvation. The helpless hero dreams of glory, fearing the hatred of the audience. He instantly fell unconscious. The fight was over before it had even begun. The hero had disappeared and the winner was the knight Kahebla. The guy screamed he couldn't believe it, it couldn't be. He lost the horses, it was all over in 5 seconds, it was impossible. Before disappearing, the level increased, making Yatsu a nature mage with the gift of plant growth and persuasion. The complexity of the topic forced him to postpone studying. The hero came back to life, everyone began to admire him in surprise. The knight lifted his visor and with a grin realized that the rumors were not lying, he really was reborn. The guy realized that the girl had defeated him. The girl became interested in how he resurrects. Someone was interested in what it was like to leave the body, because you don't understand where you are and there is darkness before your eyes. Yatsu asked to borrow horses because he had only 35 days. And without them he would not reach Reidoba. The girl asked again and said that this was the westernmost point of the continent. She thought about it and thought that he was trading with the neighboring town. The guy denied her words and said that he needed to do some work and asked again about the horses. He had 5 more days in reserve. The girl assumed that he wanted to capture the city, although 3 horses would help him. Yatsu asked again and thought that she considered him a robber. In front of him sat a man who thanked him for explaining the location of the robbers, but he could not give 3 horses, he could only lend 1. After talking with the city guards, Yotsui walked with a frustrated face, repeating that he had only gotten 1 horse. There were 3 points on the map, these were the lairs of the bandits. Kahebla and 30 soldiers were heading there. The knight said that they would leave at dawn but would arrive before noon, and she suggested that they have a training fight before that time. The guy awkwardly tried to refuse, but the girl said that she would explain how to control it. Since there is only 1 horse, he will have to become a bad guy and go to Reidoba himself. Yatsu agreed to do this. He took out his weapon again. The girl asked if he had a sword, but the guy said that it would also be good for a sword because it could cut too. Kahebla had a one-handed sword. The girl demonstrated a half-profile position that reduced the area of effect. The boy repeated it, receiving praise. The shield would have changed the stance, but the hero did not have a weapon that could be used effectively in this position. And since the first 5 seconds were hers, she gave the guy the opportunity to attack first as he liked. She deftly dodged his blows but accurately hit the right places. As in the tournament, the winner was the girl. The raised hand was in the way. I was lucky to win only 3 times out of 100 fights. It is dangerous to cut with a real sword and my abilities are weak. Lying on the floor, he thought about how not to make a buff. He had more than a month to have fun here, and here he also became a mage and all the indicators went down. And he also remembered about his inferiority complex. She remembered all his attempts in games. In basketball, he threw the ball in the wrong direction. In football, he passed it to the opponent. In baseball, he did not hit a single ball. He did not master any game with a ball, although he repeated the basic movements many times. The girl said that the hero could not understand why he could not see her movements. He asked why, and she answered him that the price for this was 1,000 repetitions a day, the basis was the correct movements. Yatsu understood that this was a lot. She told him to move slowly at first, he had to twist his wrist first, then his elbow, shoulder, hip. He agreed, and she continued that he had to watch so as not to stray from the trajectory and he had to watch until the end. Then, after 2 repetitions, it was necessary to increase the speed of movements, and if it went off course, it was necessary to repeat again but more slowly. The guy thought about it and understood how it should be done. Early morning, day X, the guy was asked about the location of the other heroes. He answered that they had not moved. The warriors decided to stick to the plan. Kahebla said that we were moving out at sunrise. Everyone shouted hooray. Shindo looked at the map and saw that he was heading towards them. Hakazaki guessed that he won the tournament. Iu supported her words. Tatte said that she would not forgive him if he lost. She would laugh at him and do nasty things. The guard discovered the escape of the heroes, noting their vulnerability and inability to sing spells. The wind's sorcery irritates the ear, promising fun after the ransom. The guard examined the armed girls. There was a base on the field. A man was finishing his patrol at dawn. Suddenly he saw people hiding behind tree trunks. At that moment Kahebla neutralized the lookout, ordering other warriors to attack. Everyone rushed into battle. The lookout on the tower began to ring the bell, shouting that the guards were attacking them. Bandits ran out of the shelter, attacking the warriors. Yatsu began to repeat the technique he had learned. and Kahebla's sword movements helped but however. Yatsu hit the fighter in the chin without losing any experience points. Realizing his defeat, the bandit opened the cage and his allies responded quickly. He started opening the door and shouting that if they could, then let them run. The roar from the cage attracted the bandits. The warrior reported their escape. The commander sent a detachment of pursuers. Inside the cage, a distorted outline of a figure in an unusual mask was visible. He growled terribly and came out of captivity. The guy did not understand who this giant was and was surprised that there were such in this world. The knight calmed him down, saying that it was a berserker. Magic power replaces food for the hero. Eating unclean flesh leads to loss of reason and transformation into a berserker, who irrevocably loses humanity and attacks everyone like a puppet. Losing flesh to the flesh of the unclean, becoming aggressive, desiring only magical power. The berserker had already tried to attack the warriors, but the guy was surprised that he was holding a long sword with one hand. He swung towards the warriors, striking. The warriors flew to the side. They fell to the ground. Yatsu stood in shock. He did not understand what it was and what kind of power it was. Kahebla ordered everyone to disperse. He would do it. Berserker swung for another blow. The monster cut through the girl's shield, astonishing Yatsu. Armed with a sword, she attacked the berserker with a huge tearing blade. The warriors noticed Kahebla with the legendary sword in his hands. Kahebla, the knight's daughter, is eager for battle and for slicing meat, calling the berserker a tasty morsel. The warriors are surprised by her zeal. The guy tried to figure out if they were fighting on equal terms, although the berserker was crushing her with brute physical force. Despite their different builds, their endurance was almost equal. It was cool. Soon Kahebla would run out of strength. She urgently needed help. The berserker knocked her sword out of her hands and the girl fell to the ground. The monster raised its hand to strike, but then Yatsu jumped up, holding the berserker's sword with a kitchen knife. It worked. He saw the movement along the trajectory he saw. His power had grown so fast that his weapon had broken. He had to think of something. He remembered that he had a weapon, a skill, nature magic. With his powers of persuasion, he tried to call upon it. He tried to convince the berserker that there was a killer behind him. The monster turned around in search and tried to attack. At that moment, the guy stuck a knife into the monster's side. With exclamations that he was taken in, the monster grabbed the guy by the head and attacked him with a sword. The guy realized that he was going to disappear again. He saw that it was the girl who had cut him down again. At that time, the girl was flying towards the monster in an attacking pose. Kahebla slew the monster with a sword strike. Below, the guard found a hidden door, mentioning alarm over the events above. The shelter is securely hidden. The two bandits were defeated, the cage opened, and Yatsu tried to explain. The savior apologized for the first defeat in the tournament and the only horse, offering the girls an independent trip. Their reaction is disappointment and irritation. Yatsu suggested that two of them go on the cart, and the rest of them complete the first part of the task. The horses are alive, and if they get tired on the way, the trip will be pointless. Then Kahebla entered, pleasantly surprised to see all the heroes. The girl introduced herself to the other heroes. She has several people under her command, and by taking a long vacation, she can go with them to the place. She thinks that they will meet on the way. Yatsu asked again in surprise. The girl continued that there would be two rewards as a plus. The first one was that she would give them horses for the journey to Reincarnation. That was great news. And the second one, she would give all four of them lessons in swordsmanship. And then nothing would matter. She was an excellent swordsman. The girls were shocked and looked at each other angrily. Yatsu acknowledged his lack of choice, predicting a month of suffering. The battle-loving Kahebla joyfully ran to report to her father. An important detail of the mission is an unknown cargo. Shindo learns to control the Hikotree horse, an omnivorous biped used with a wheeled saddle. Kahebla was interested in what business they had in the borderlands. The merchants were chatting that people who approached the city disappeared. She was also interested in what she and her father had talked about. The guy said that they had met. The girl smiled sarcastically. She lowered the visor and they set off. The journey west had begun. Would they learn what cargo they required? Task: complete 5% of the map, deliver cargo to Reincarnation. Remaining time 33 days 23 hours. Hakazaki sat with a sad face and looked at the sky, sitting separately from everyone. Traveling to Reincarnation, the western edge of the continent. Waking up in a cage, Hakazaki screamed as she saw a guard with dreadlocks and a knife slowly approaching her. Fear gripped the girl. The man looked agitated. They couldn't defend themselves against the girl's brute force. The girls stood with weapons in their hands, and the guards wanted to have fun with them. Hakazaki was very scared. Her body was shaking. She was waiting for Yotsui to return. The screams of the bandits who wanted to surrender, claiming the invisibility of the entrance, could be heard from behind the door. Hakazaki remembered tracking the map and was glad that Yotsu, the savior, had appeared. There was a crash of a broken door and the robbers were neutralized by the warriors. The girl was happy, but she was still scared. The defeated man lay with an angry face looking at the warrior. He was pierced by a spear, he made terrible sounds and red liquid started to flow from his mouth and then from his nose. The robber let out his last tears and lay unconscious. Hakozaki covered her eyes with her hands. She had just seen a man being robbed of his most precious possession in a second. The man who had attacked her had disappeared painfully. The warriors said that they had found 3 heroes. The door of their underground prison opened and the girls were horrified. There were dozens of bodies lying on the ground. The thick smell of red liquid spilled on the ground hit their noses. Kahebla saw the hut and ordered it to be burned, but first to look for gold. The warriors carried the jewelry and gold into the cart. There was some good armor there. She said that they would divide it equally later. It was night outside. Yu asked Kyusu if she had calmed down. She replied that her heart was a little uneasy. Shindo sat down next to her, reminding her about the pile of bodies and that Yotsui seemed indifferent. Hakozaki agreed. The guy was cooking dinner. The girl remembered that he was a level 10 cook and had managed to get a pot somewhere. But if she ate now, she would throw up. With such success, she would become slim in this world. Kyusu supported her. Yu said that it was time to eat. It was Kyusu's turn. She thought about how they had been released from the underground prison and returned to the city. They had left the city in the afternoon and were moving west. The horses were being cared for and guarded, so they slept peacefully at night. Speaking of horses, they were similar to them only in name. Cute with big eyes, and after meeting Kahebla, Yotsu spent all his time with her. Hakozaki was painfully aware of the weakness of her body and spirit, despising brute force, which had no place in modern Japanese society. She wanted to share her experiences with her loved one. Yotsui healed minor wounds with natural magic, gaining experience. Kahebla became interested in the method of treatment, and Kyusu dreamed of gaining healing abilities. It irritated her that the knight was always next to him. It wasn't fair, she met him first anyway, he would pass her. Kakazaki didn't like physical education. Doctors forbade her to do sports, so she didn't find any friends because there were no people like her in the class. There was no need to try. Because of her poor health, she was practically not allowed to do anything. And since there was no strength, I had to find myself in something else. I didn't go into the financial sector because it was hard to talk about. I confessed to my parents that I wanted to be a pharmacist. An institute with a pharmacology department requires 6 years of study, and she will try. Imagining a leisurely stroll on a weekend, Hakozaki was transported from Japan to a world of violence. Physical health became a valuable skill. The previously impossible became possible. Hakozaki, crying, acknowledged her weakness and lack of time, 28 days 14 hours. While fighting the night, she dreamed of nature magic. Time was shortening, 26 days 15 hours. She realized the futility of trying to become a warrior. Kyusu held the sword in her hand and then saw a goblin in the red liquid. She stabbed the sword into someone. Anger began to boil in her veins, and the girl began to cry and apologize. She looked at her hands, they were all red. This sticky feeling left on her hands was disgusting. She asked Kakebla why she liked to fight. The girl decided to answer her. Animal targets are ideal for fencing training. Cutting tendons is useful. The battle gives unforgettable emotions, strengthening confidence in actions. Everyone else was shocked. Hakozaki looked at her hand. Kahebla remembered the thrill of combat, which she had learned from her father who had trained on live targets. The sisters, surprised, called the family abnormal. But back to Hakozaki's life, her parents sacrificed everything for her. The images of Yotsu and Shindo appeared before her. She did something like reevaluate these two, reconsidering her approach to evaluating people. She wanted to fulfill her dream and return to normal life. Kyusu stood next to the goblin and apologized, and to do that she had to fight. There were 15 days and 5 hours left. Shindo spotted soldiers being attacked by monsters using a telescope. Among the soldiers were civilians and children. Wanting to help, Hakozaki faced Yotsu's disapproval. After all, they had no time, they couldn't help them, they were completely unknown to them and they had to get around them. The girl and the guy exchanged disapproving glances. Kyusu suggested going alone. Shindo expressed her disagreement. Yotsu confirmed the futility of helping. The girl apologized, reminding about the importance of selfless support of people. She's tired of being the kid who fails, so she won't give up. The guy started laughing. A child who fails, she no longer cares about her life. He realized that she was becoming cool. He decided to take part in this adventure too. Shindo asked again and asked how the rescue would help their main task. He replied that maybe this group was going to raid Adobe. The boy said that he and Hakozaki were heading there and the rest of the team was moving on. As far as possible, they should leave and not return. He asked Kyusu if she was ready. She confirmed, and they rode on the cart towards the battle. There were many monsters ahead of them. They arrived, but almost all of them were destroyed already. the wolf said that the heroes had arrived. These were kobolds, stronger than the 3 beastmen, threat level E out of 8 possible. The regular soldiers of the kingdom had an experience advantage, slightly increasing the chances of victory. The combat power assessment is conditional, but the 3 opponents are 3 times stronger than Yotsu. The heroes decided to accept the fight, taking the initiative. The fighters supported the decision. The battle begins. Yotsu had a frying pan and a kitchen knife in his hands. Hakazaki was destroyed. It was useless because they were stronger and outnumbered them. This was not their fight. The guy decided to use nature magic. Yotsu used the berserker trick unsuccessfully. The wolf, not reacting to the speech, bit the guy on the arm, dragging him along. The distance between them is minimal. Yotsu poked the wolf in the eye, it howled, and the boy fell to the ground. He tried to grab the wolf by the legs and it worked, the wolf missed. The boy knocked down the wolf and raised a kitchen knife over it, but the wolf bit him on the neck. Yotsui was out cold. The fighters were running towards the wolves. He kept saying that she hadn't helped again. The warrior was fighting the wolf and Kyusu didn't understand why she was there. There was no point in fighting if she couldn't protect. Hakazaki resurrected and addressed the wolf that he hadn't destroyed her. The wolf immediately ran towards the girl. She said that we'll see who will win. Shindo suddenly pierced the wolf with the chosen sword, taking advantage of the moment of relaxation. The heavy blade brought victory, after which the girl cried, apologizing to the killed animal. Yotsu wondered why Shindo was always apologizing as if he was feeling guilty. Success was more important than worries. Returning to life, the boy called the wolf affectionately, causing the animal to become furious. The guy started running away from him, and the wolf ran after him. They ran up to the cart, and one of the warriors swung his arm to attack. The warrior defeated the last wolf. Yotsu used nature magic to stimulate cell regeneration. Healing requires contact with the wound, nourishment, and rest. The dead remain irretrievable. Demon blood restores magical powers by using the corpse and blood of the victim. After the massacre, 6 people survived. The soldier thanks Yotsu and asks about the direction of the squad. Dyoku's regular army transports are Taros's band supporters. Violations are severely punished, and many are suspected of being in hiding. This city is an international port city Raidadab. Convenient, located on a hill, and they will clean it up. Task: deliver cargo to Raidadab. What kind of cargo and who knows? The girls didn't understand they had to transport people sentenced to disappearance. Tatte didn't want to go. Heretics, children, it sounded like nonsense. To deliver the heretics. Yes, no, Yotsu thought about what to do, the appearance of Yotsu the Just. The man said they were soldiers of the Dyoku state. Would they help deliver the condemned? They were carrying out the king's order to transport the pagans. Destination Raidadab, the girls stood shocked. They did not know what to do. The children were also sentenced to destruction. The knight asked the man whether Dyoku had power over the western region, and whether he had the right to sentence non-citizens. The man was curious about how she knew and asked her to give her name. The girl introduced herself as the knight Kahebla from the city of the state of Cortanilo, and if he mistook her for an ordinary soldier, then he needed to rub his eyes and watch his tongue. The man smiled sarcastically, remembering the small state at the crossroads of trade routes, and also realized that he was being impolite. He was also a soldier of Camelot, the main bodyguard of King Dyoku and the commander of his squad. The girl thought that they were complete ignoramuses in military affairs. His group was defeated by kobolds, and if it were not for them, they would all have disappeared. He glared at her and she returned his gaze with a smirk. Both warriors reached for their weapons when Shindo appeared between them, asking them to stop. Kahebla said that the Dyoku kingdom was seeking to take over the mainland and rule as a dictatorship. She was going to bury him right there. The man replied that it was unforgivable to mock King Dyoku. He would destroy anyone who inconvenienced the king. Shindo asked Yotsu for help, but he asked her to wait. The boy called a general council and called the heroes to him. He tried to restore the boy and started a conversation. First of all, he thought about how they needed to stop insulting each other and think about what to do next. A must-have event, this expression is used in games, an adventure that must certainly happen. Moving along their route to the final point, they could not accidentally meet them at the site of the attack. There is a high probability that the cargo in this mission will be condemned prisoners. Therefore, by helping the soldiers deliver the prisoners to Raidadab, they will complete 2 tasks at once. This is the first option. But there is a second one. In theory, it could also include the delivery of children and those who may die. Speaking of this, they need to protect their lives and help the child. This is half of the mandatory task. There is a third option. They need to choose a route based on the game template. Shindo asked how it is. The main idea of a multi-story is that the ending depends on the choice, so the story is created. There were several paths in the task. If you choose the fourth option, not to help the soldiers, then you need to find a new load to complete the task. If the third, then the delivery of prisoners is a 50-50 chance, and it is still unknown that they did not make a mistake with the load. Therefore, his opinion is that they should choose the third one and help deliver the prisoners. At the same time, they could complete the second task. Simply speaking about the probability, it is quite dangerous to refuse the army men now. He asked what they would do. Tatte had an idea. Probably delivery is delivery but to Raidadoba, and from there you can help them board the ship and send them to your country. Yatsu confirmed and said that this was her version of the story. Shindo assumed that they had decided to help these people. They confirmed and said that it would be better this way. Deciding to cooperate for now, they all went on together. The boy never regained consciousness. Information was needed first, speaking of which 3 adepts survived. The man thanked them for the invitation. He was Fafusur, a preacher. He came here from the continent of Isia. The preacher told them his story. He promised to tell everything if they helped the boy escape. Yatsu perked up, thinking about the original story now. Would it open up a multi-story if he chose another option? The followers of Arteros are strangers from another continent who are persecuted and destroyed in Dioku. Therefore, they will not be able to receive protection in Raidadobe either. Yatsu understood why the cult of Arteros is banned in the country. He was interested in social classes. Everything is as usual, his abilities depend on what caste he was born into. But in the culture of Arteros there is no such thing. They are all equal and help each other in defense against enemies. The current king wanted to colonize the neighboring small countries, expanding his possessions. They also, regardless of birth, attach great importance to serving God and protecting the people. Was that bad? The boy thought that history was repeating itself. It was like the persecution of Christianity in Japan. He asked why she was being persecuted. Hakazaki asked why this happened. She was irritated by the missionary work. Shindo and Yatsu looked at her in surprise. The man sighed sadly and looked at the ceiling. In this case, the motive was that in this country no one is honored except the king, and people who believe in God and the king began to distance themselves from each other. After all, everyone has their own worldview. Conflicts began to arise among neighbors, and these skirmishes began to intensify. The man said that, responding to aggression with aggression, the executions continued and people began to destroy each other's churches and relics. The destruction of the statues of the Dioku kings was the decisive move, and then they began to officially persecute and introduce executions. Shindo awkwardly said that they destroyed the statues in vain. It is a hard thing. God Dizisius is simple and peaceful and they preach love for God. But with the help of the Bible, the followers failed to achieve peace and mutual understanding. Then their faith was divided into peaceful people and not. Yatsu thought that this was something new. Since Religion A and Religion B appeared, extremists appeared and the possibility of conflicts increased, but he immediately realized that he was wrong. He realized that they were very similar. Tatte thought that this was nonsense, all this religion and kings, and the boy realized that they were next. At night, the boy turned to Camelot. He asked why they had set out on a dangerous journey to Raidadobe to execute the Arteros followers there. The man replied to stop them. They had come from the continent of Isia, and Raidadobe was like a front door for them. They were a danger due to the increasing number and hostility of the missionaries. The main task was to weaken them. The map showed the state of Dioku, the territory of Iria, the city of Raidadobe, the continent of Isia. The king invaded the city-state of Serpom 16 years ago. The boy shouted words of encouragement to his father. He shouted that his father was the strongest, and his father replied that he would not let them down. The ratio of armies was 18-1. Which foreshadowed a guaranteed victory in the battle. Only 300 men disappeared. The boy was happy that his dad had won. A man on crutches, all bandaged, was walking towards him. The boy said sadly, "Dad." However, that time has passed, and Diok is ruled by the 5th dynasty of kings. Today's soldiers were provided with household and servants. If the father or son disappears or gets injured, he also gives a servant. This is the first phase to unite the country. First, it was necessary to improve the life of the citizens. She will realize this goal and intends to continue to colonize. This is his home and he will clean it. He wanted to save the weak. The king is kind to all people and wants to create a united state. He was not going to change his mind. The Arteros brotherhood must be erased from the mainland. The man asked if he was explaining clearly. Yatsu thought that the man was as straight as a stick. Shindo said that he had gone too far with the public execution. They were sitting by the fire. The man was surprised by the words about the king. The girl did not think he was kind. Tatte thought that a country with a dictatorship was bad, but the guy thought that he had not told everything yet. The boy and the girls were very surprised. Camelot also began to scream. Didn't he clearly explain that he would not allow the king to be insulted? He would destroy anyone. Tatte turned to Iu, trying to prove that this was so. She continued to say, until the game is over, they cannot be destroyed. Shindo asked to cover her mouth. Yatsu asked not to pay attention to what she said. He did not remember why she was so excited. The man asked to explain what this meant. The guy began to explain that each person understands it in his own way. The king, too, can generally make mistakes. It is better to keep your mouth shut with the royal guards. They could pass through the mountains in 7 days. There were still 5 left. The man said that if they went around, then in Mranbu, the country that had dominion over Raidadob, they could be discovered. They had to go into the mountains. Yatsu thought about how he had behaved suspiciously the night before last. They had talked too much. We wanted to reach our destination in 12 days. They looked at the map and tried to choose a safe route. Time remaining 13 days 6 hours. There is a danger of being seen if you get too close to Moranba. Plan 1, a tunnel dug in ancient times, seems to be quite old, and it is unknown whether it is possible to pass through it. Plan 2, the shortest route in the changing mountains. The remaining time is 11 days and 20 hours. The warrior and Yatsu were pushing the cart because it was stuck. One of the warriors asked to pay attention to something. They entered the cave. The guy had a strange feeling. The man said that it was made by a civilization that lived 1,000 years ago. The cave has tricky mechanisms, so no unnecessary movements after they enter. One of the warriors asked to wait for them there for a while they turned off the mechanism. In front of the group, there was a cliff in which there was a large mechanism. It was very large. The water wheel began to move the mechanism, and therefore the gangway moved towards them. Yatsu turned to the shouts. Someone was indignant because something had happened. As it turned out, the entrance to the tunnel was closed. The soldiers were shouting and asking to open it. The guy realized that the tunnel was closed because of the mechanism. This is a test of the heroes. They can pray to their god. He did not want to tolerate leniency from religions alien to them. And strong monsters settled inside this tunnel, so the man asked to take care of himself. Camelot shouted to his soldiers to move forward. One of the warriors did not understand what the heroes were doing. The girls started shouting angrily towards the warriors. Yatsu was angry too. The probable load had been taken away and time had been taken away too. They needed to figure out where the exit was. They were forced into the dungeon. How unfortunate, because they had given him their secret, the carousel, the cave made by ancient people. The knight stepped onto the ramp that had fallen into place. Everything was fine. She thought it was a shortcut. The girl would go ahead and take on 3 people. Shindo was curious about what was there. Kahebla said that they could go. The group was inspired and immediately tried to go. Yatsu immediately ran into the cave. The next barrier is the huge hammers. Yatsu must prove that he is worthy of the title of hero. He must overcome them. It will not be easy. There were traps everywhere. Yatsu must try. There were drawings on the poles. Yatsu understood everything and smiled contentedly. The hammers swung in different directions. Kahebla went first. So far, so good. Task. Time remaining 11 days, 14 hours. Time remaining 10 days, 23 hours. Yatsu asked them to go on without him. In an instant, very suddenly, Shindo was not sure of his words. A third room appeared. The girls stood in front of a room where the walls were moving. They were sliding in and out. Yatsui didn't like it. Here, one of the walls began to move forward. Shindo said, 2 chaotically moving walls about 200 meters long. She had no idea how they were synchronized. Hakazaki agreed, since there was practically no space between the walls. Tatte said that with the cart it would take 40 seconds. Based on the sound, it is believed that it works as a bird repellent. Shishiodoshi is a bamboo tube that, when filled with water, hits a stone, filling with water. At first, they realized that Yatsui had gone flying. After resurrecting, the girls shouted to the guy how he was. The girls were shocked. He was at the bottom of the pit and apologized for not being able to get out. Shindo said that it's about the height of an 8-story building. There's nothing to help him, and it's also pretty creepy. She thinks it'll be hard for Yatsu to recover here for the entire quest. One of the walls came out again. They needed to finish this task. Shindo hoped that the boy would be okay. They had to survive for 10 days and decide if they needed the wagon with the cargo while it was just holding them up. But first, they had to figure out how to get out of there. Kyusu said that it was necessary to count the time of the first stop of the wall, and asked to look because they acted in time repeating. The near wall 60, 15, 45, 30 and in reverse order. Far wall 3 times 10, 20, 2 times 10, 20, 30, 10 2 times 20, 10, 30 and 10, 22 times. Shindo understood everything. The walls continued to move in and out. Shindo heard the sound change and the numbers, in her opinion, did not add up. The girl realized that it was not the interval of movement, but the total number of seconds. There are several forces moving the trap. There were 2 levers. One moves after 60 seconds and the second after 75 seconds. It was a fantasy drawing of the mechanism. Well, the far wall had 3 levers for 30 seconds, 40 seconds and 50 seconds. Hakozaki confirmed that 30, 40, 50, 60, and 75 were absolutely the same interval of movement of the levers. Kyusu realized that the walls move for 600 seconds. In other words, 600 seconds is a full cycle. First, they must make a timetable, coloring the time of the lever's movements in black. She thinks she can set aside a time for clarity that is not suitable for the transition, and they will also note the movement of each lever individually. They will also paint over the time when the far wall blocks the passage, and from 190 to 230 for 40 seconds. And from 540 to 600 for 60 seconds, there is a transition point. The girls started counting down the time. After they got it right, they happily shouted that they did it. Shindo said that they would go to the next transition point. After the 570th second, the girl quickly headed towards the crossing. She was able to run and the girls were happy. Shindo thought about it and asked Yotsui if he was there. The guy confirmed. The girl said that she went further. The guy thought that after the fall he had some food and a torch. He thought how to get out and it seemed there was no way out, there were only bones around. Tatte asked, would they just leave like that and not help in any way? Hakozaki said that they should try to finish with the three of them. Shindo supported them because they were at the finish line and could come up with something later. They should do it. There is practically no gap between the bricks. The approximate size of a brick is 70 by 140 centimeters. The guy couldn't think of anything. From below, no way, from the side also did not fit. He tried to insert the knife in some interesting way. But if you gouge out a place the size of a leg, then you can get out. He looked up and saw how much further he had to crawl. He knocked out bricks little by little, moved up, knocking out the next one and so on for 30 meters. He knew he would come back to life, but it was still scary. First, the climb lasted 6 hours. The only source of light, the torch, went out, and even with his eyes open he could not see anything. Thick darkness enveloped him. Despite this, he trusted the sensations of his hands and continued working. His eyes were no longer needed. He could concentrate with his eyes closed. This is a double fear. In complete darkness, various thoughts began to creep into Yotsu's head. Memories of a loner. With the help of memories to drown out the fear in order to see the light once more. After falling down a few dozen times, he lost count. Finally, Yotsui Yusuke returned to the line. He started laughing because he thought he wouldn't make it. Master, he got out. The remaining time is 10 days and 5 hours. After rising, the need for light disappeared, moving by touch on the wall with the help of a map. The map shows the place where he crashed many times. The sills are leaving him, since the last time he slept was 40 hours ago, and the last time he saw light was 30 hours ago. The guy saw a glowing tile on the floor. It was a magazine. He offered his hand to the magazine and saw Hakozaki crying. She said that he served her family for 5 years and 3 months. The warrior by Musbak alone was worth 3 of Dioku's soldiers. He was an excellent swordsman, and surely with him she would have visited places like these some other time. Surely, Kahebla said so. The guy felt sorry for him. From that moment on, Yotsui became even more lonely. He remembered the moments when he spent time with this warrior. He was friendless again, becoming a stranger like 3 years ago, closing the door to his heart even tighter. He looked back at the warrior and thanked him and also said goodbye, which made him even more withdrawn. Time left 8 days, 21 hours. The sun was shining, breaking through the cave. Shindo was fighting the bats. She would take the key he held. In front of them was a high bridge again, under which was a cliff. On it were different types of monsters from bats to some skeletons. The girls fought with bats, as did the warriors. Kahebla didn't want to admit it, but of the 4 of them, Shindo was the best at killing bloodsuckers. The girl thanked her. She had been playing tennis for almost 2 years but quit. She even took part in tennis competitions where there were the same small balls. The girl destroyed several more bats. The knight asked her why she quit. Shindo remembered her coach telling her that if she wanted to achieve anything, she should aim for the top 8. He hoped that she wouldn't lose the match because she only lost the first game. The reason is the defective magic. Because of this, the body's abilities are reduced. It was all the master's fault. It's a shame. The girl smiled and said that she would continue definitely in high school. One of the monsters pierced Kahebla through and through. It made a hole in her. Shindo saw it and was surprised, just like the knight herself. She fell down the cliff. All the girls screamed, trying to reach their friend. Yuu repeated that she did not believe it. It was impossible. A serious opponent stood before her, and the mice lay on the ground, one of which woke up again. The girl also noticed this. She got the 10th level. Immediately everything except the master froze for a while. The girl was surprised by the 10th level and realized that she would get other skills. The master congratulated her on her 10th level and started spinning the profession roulette. Last time she was a magician. The seconds dragged on for the girl. She needed to help Kahebla quickly. The master spun the roulette and said, I'm spinning, I want to deceive. She became. After receiving the profession, he pressed the button and time started running again. He started the time. The girl decided to go into close combat. She threw herself chest to the enemy, being a warrior swordsman. The man said Shindo Iu, a swordsman warrior. While fighting in the arena in the cave, Shindo began to counterattack. She screamed at him to disappear. The girl struck the monster with such anger. She realized that his skin was not pierced. The monster immediately wanted to attack the girl. He struck her so hard that her arm broke and the girl was thrown back. She tried to stop, but she was already hanging over the cliff. Stones were falling down. Iu held on. The girls were surprised. One of the warriors screamed. Kashabla fell into the water and was already lying on the bottom. The girls opened the room and wondered what was there. It was the fifth room. They looked around the room and wondered what it was. They assumed it was an arena. It was indeed a room with an arena. Shindo noticed something. Kashabla realized what it was. There was a gargoyle that moved. It was an artificial organism created. A liquid stored in a glass flask is poured into it, reviving the mummy. Thousands of years have passed and it still works. The knight said disappointedly that it still worked. Lost technology of the ancients. The monster broke the chains and jumped down. The monster's eyes lit up. Shindo did her best to climb back into the arena. The wound should heal in 20 or 15 seconds. These two were not fighters, and if Manhua was wounded he would not recover, so he could not fight. There was nowhere to go. They were surprised that Yotsui was already so close. It was necessary to gain some more time. There was a fourth room. The guy was surprised that it became a little lighter. He said sarcastically that it was just wonderful because the fourth room was a labyrinth. Thanks to the girls who had passed earlier, he could follow the map with the road indicated. Wanting to see his team, which was also moving forward without sleep or rest, he had very little time left. She thought that all lives were fair, not equal. Equal when it is evaluated as in figure skating or gymnastics. But the cost of life is points received at birth, as a result of which it became possible to divide by ranks. He came to the question of who he was and repeated the same thing. The guy did not understand who he was. The girl's left hand was restored. She was immediately attacked by bats. They got her. She tried to find her hat and shield. Shindo put on her uniform. She noticed the monster's wound and thought that she had managed to reach it. Or Kashabla had not reached it with her two-handed sword. The monster had a skeleton over the flesh. Speaking of the skeleton, during training there was something. She was a girl, but strong men could not defeat her. Among the girls of her country, she is the second strongest. In overall rank, she was about 70th. Considering that the number of female warriors compared to male warriors was 1 to 50 or less. Kashabla asked how the difference in strength could be overcome. The girl replied that victory could be achieved by swordsmanship. The knight agreed. The swordsman's target is weak points. Armor and bones are hard and difficult to cut through. On the battlefield, death is at the tip of the sword. This way you could defeat the enemy, instantly killing or inflicting a mortal wound. The girl also asked if she knew where to hit. Shindo assumed it was in the neck. The knight said that was basically correct, but there were still many weak points in the armor. The areas are the joints on the armor and the slit for the eyes on the helmet. And the heart, at first glance it was behind the armor and behind the bones. But if you go around the protection from above or below and pierce, you had to pierce from above in the collarbone area. If from below, then through the diaphragm, 2 points where there is no protection, since these are places of many connections. Shindo remembered that it was between the ribs. She hoped that the location of the heart was the same as a human's. 2 places to get it, otherwise it would not be destroyed. The girl gathered her thoughts and got down to business. The monster and the girl launched a second attack. Shindo tried to approach him from the right side, and now the place where the sword would be inserted became accessible to her. She made up her mind and screamed, trying to hit him, but the monster immediately caught up with her, hitting her hand. The hand with the sword no longer belonged to the girl. The monster was faster and stronger. The girl was in great pain. The monster swung again. His sword arm was aiming for the girl. In an instant, Yu quickly covered her shield with her hand. The sword arm hit the shield just right. The monster drove his hand into the ground with his blow. The girl managed to jump back and found herself behind his back. She grabbed one of the monster's vertebrae with her legs. Yu made a full circle. She turned over and was already lying back to back with the monster. A little later, she was already sitting on his shoulders, trying to catch the sword. The girl grabbed her hand with the sword and raised it up. The girl was very angry and swung her sword to strike. She plunged the sword into the heart. The monster's eyes lit up. Yatsu's reason for being, why the game chose him with the proposed player base, forcing him to act randomly, handing out professions with a roulette. If you think about it, there is only one possible answer. He must become a leader, to take control, because in strategy he was the best. The girls and the warrior turned around and saw Yatsu. And the guy saw Shindo lying down and the monster was standing over her. The girl saw him and was happy, calling him her beloved, but he was walking too slowly. The monster fell from a severe wound. Yatsu was surprised, saying slowly. He smiled, realizing what it was. The warrior ran up to the guy, shouting Kahebla's name and remembering her last moments. Yatsu started looking for her with his eyes. He didn't see her. The warrior said that she fell down where the sword was. The guy asked how long ago it happened. He was told that about minutes ago. The guy immediately ran towards the sword. Everyone was surprised. The guy ran 2 fingers in a circle and jumped into the abyss. Memories flew by. Shindo and Tatte said a little irritatedly that he ran to save Kahebla. Hakazaki was glad that he finally made up his mind. He flew down and landed in the water. He held his breath and saw the knight lying on the bottom. The group was reunited, the gargoyle was defeated, Kahebla was saved. Their Yotsui had been everywhere. She remembered the battle in the cave and then she opened her eyes and saw the joyful face of the warrior who praised the god that she had come to her senses. The girl wondered if she was alive. She was in pain, the surviving Kahebla with a scar proof of a true warrior. The magic of nature accelerated the renewal of cells, which made it possible for the wound to quickly heal. At that time, Yatsu's mana was approximately 1,400. After healing the wound to a depth of 2 millimeters, reducing the cut by 5 centimeters, and stopping the bleeding, all his mana was gone. He began to treat a serious wound without having enough experience. In the arena room, a vanished civilization invested a huge amount of mana and human blood into a liquid that resurrected and was the driving force of anthropogenic creatures. Surely, if they found out about it, they would officially register it and make it world property. Yatsu, in order to restore his strength, emptied everything. That dose of mana was approximately equal to 3,200,000. In general, repeating the procedure 2,300 times, he used up all the mana. Finally, after the treatment was completed, he fainted and fell asleep. And he is still in this state. Kahebla turned her head towards the lying guy. She wondered how she could be so tired that she could sleep with her eyes open and rolled back. The warrior said that he had to go and that he would call the others. The girls drove the horses and carts, having got out of the cave. Kahebla closed his eyes and thought. She began to approach his lips. The girl moved her hair a little and kissed the guy. Shindo, Hakazaki and Tatte looked into the cart saying, "Oops." Kahebla felt awkward, but she smiled and put her finger to her mouth, signaling that they should be silent. Shindo asked what she was doing. She looked embarrassed and said that she was doing nothing. She also thought she should ask if they were dating. Yu waved her hands and denied it. The knight asked again and said she would try it with him because they were similar. Tatte asked how they were alike. Both were strange. The girl answered that he was completely dedicated to his work. The girl did not understand what kind of person she was and how far she could go in business. She didn't care how far or where she would go to fulfill her duty. The highest reward was to disappear in battle. Her country was in the center of a large continent, but it was small. Therefore, she had to hire knights. 3 times a year, a martial arts tournament was held, after which, depending on the rank of the place taken, a fee was charged. If you are strong, it does not matter who you are, a boy or a girl. They have 3,000 mercenaries, more than 100 families of famous knights, and she is the 70th in rank. Her father is 2nd in rank, her elder brother is 8th, and her younger brother is 15th. Whatever you say, she is not their equal. No matter how hard she tries, the difference cannot be reduced. Kyusu asked if that was the reason she went on the expedition. The knight confirmed, but primarily because of the thirst for battle. The girls were shocked by her answer. She decided to change the environment to gain potential and combat experience. Her father said that every battle teaches something new. In other words, fight while you're alive. The girls thought in surprise, how is her teacher? Tatte said, after all, what do those words mean? What kind of person am I? It was her. The girl thought, if you make a mistake when you want to be like your brothers and father. Kahebla didn't think so, but the girls started to encourage her. They thought so. Kyusu asked her not to be afraid to be herself. The girl asked hesitantly because she didn't know that was possible, but the girls reassured her, saying that it was necessary. Yatsu began to open his eyes and move. The boy jumped up and screamed in fear. He began to say that this was a misunderstanding. The girls turned around immediately. Shindo said he scared her, but she was smiling. Kyusu and Tatte didn't understand what had happened. Yotsui sat up, rubbing his head. He didn't know how long he had slept or where they were. His thoughts were on the cargo, and he wondered what kind of cargo they had. Shindo asked if he meant the goods. Yatsu replied that he was talking about their precious cargo that they had to deliver. He wondered what time it was. He realized that he had slept for a long time. Hakazaki said if there were any other thoughts or if it was a trick question. She also said what else could be similar to the cargo. Yatsu said their cargo is their time. He felt like everything here was ambiguous. Perhaps the Japanese language limits his thinking, but he doesn't understand what kind of people from the future are or what this hiring is for. Yatsu said that yes, when the 3 of them were together, they handled the village's request. Honestly, he wondered if he had pushed his problem onto them. and he also wondered if it might have been a hint. He remembered the village elder without a name, the village without a name, and the orders were strange. So you can find a couple more villages that should appear if you approach the last house. He asked what the girls thought about it. They would do quests for these villages or someone's personal ones. They already knew how to destroy goblins. After all, they had already seen several species. He wondered how many species of goblins there were in the world, and whether there was a friendly species among them, but that would all come later. Now he needed to think about the task. They need to find the cargo and deliver it somehow to complete the multi-story as shown in the paragraph. In front of them was the already familiar table, which showed their plan of action. Yatsu said, and here there is a high probability of the fourth option. And as he said earlier, in this situation, you need to immediately decide on the load. There was a high chance that the condemned were not their cargo. The note did not say where to get and what to deliver to Raidadab. Tatte said, but it was all in vain. Yatsu looked at the girl with displeasure. Shindo was perplexed by her words. Kyusu supported the girl and asked to wait a minute, and if they were wrong, they would really be destroyed. Yatsu thought about it and realized that she was right. After all, there is the first option. As he already said, cargo is cargo, but you need to recognize which one is theirs. In case of refusal from the condemned, there is a possibility of losing the cargo. He didn't know what to do, and then the guy said again that they needed to split up. The girls were taken aback by his words. This guy always shocks them. Time remaining 7 days, 1 hour. A map of the continent appeared before them. Tatte stood there dissatisfied. They were about to be divided into groups. Yatsu said that he and Shindo were strong, so he thought it would be good if they split up. There were 2 left. The boy asked who would go where. They divided up like this. Team A was looking for cargo destined for Raidadab. The team consisted of 1 horse, a cargo cart, and also warrior Manhua, Kahabla's personal soldier, 7th level swordsman Hakazaki, 4th level swordsman, 10th level air mage Shindo. Team B chases after the royal guards. It consists of 2 horses, a passenger carriage Kahabla, a level 6 fire mage Tatte, a level 9 nature mage, a level 10 farmer, and a level 10 chef Yotsui. 8 days before, the guy remembered how he talked to the man asking what he was looking for. The man was looking for another message. The guy thought that they always came home and it was very convenient. The boy said that there was more in the cart. Why did he need so much? The man said that once they flew home, they never returned. The night before, Yotsui and the others were locked in the cave. The bird was flying and the boy wondered what Camelot had written there. He remembered how the wall in the cave closed, how Camelot had betrayed them. Kahabla assumed that it was probably a report about hostile heroes and soldiers from Cortenla whom he wanted to ban in the cave. They did not know that they came from there. Therefore, she did not know how the warlike country would act if after such a report their group disappeared without a trace. Tatte said she thought they would blame the heroes and soldiers of Cortenla who died in the cave. She thought it was complete nonsense. Kahabla confirmed maybe it was far-fetched, she didn't know, she just didn't want war. And if we talk about war with this state, they are 10 times smaller, there is almost no chance of victory. She didn't want the country to suffer because of her fault. Yatsu said that they would play with them a little and first, they would tell them that Cortenla was not an enemy by writing about it in a letter. But he did not know the letter and could not forge the handwriting and signature, and it would not work to intimidate him into writing. And there was a possibility that they might not believe this report. Tatte wondered if this was too much. The boy denied it and thought that maybe the letter wouldn't have the desired effect, or they could ignore the letter and attack Cortonolo. He had one thought, thanks to which they would all disappear safely. The girls were surprised and they became scared by his words and strange face. Time remaining 5 days, 17 hours. We found the guards with the prisoners. Everyone is safe, but there is a small problem. Due to the flat terrain, we keep our distance. Time remaining 5 days, 9 hours. The guy said they were starting tomorrow. Yuki understood but asked if it bothered him. After all, they had planned a bad thing. Or instead of a hero, he plans to become the Demon King. The guy replied, what can you do, that's the situation. The girl replied that she missed games, hadn't played online for almost a year. She would like to meet Tsukasa sooner. Tatte thought for a long time, is this world virtual? He answered that he did not know. She wanted to give an example, remembering the kiss, what if in this world to kiss? The guy didn't understand her question and thought about it. He suddenly became inspired and suggested that she kissed Manhua. The girl immediately got angry and said that she only speaks for their team. The girl said that she was just giving an example, and she wasn't talking about herself. Tatte thought that he was a real fool. Or better yet, he missed his level rise while he was asleep. She wondered how he would react if he were awake. Time remaining 4 days, 15 hours. Camelot said it was a tough march. He listed all the fallen soldiers in the report. They have a very difficult situation, but they continue their march under his command. They were moving towards their goal. After all, there was very little left. The warriors said that they would cleanse their continent of this filth. Camelot was surprised. He said, How did you come out of the cave? The man ordered to destroy the guy, but he put his hand forward and asked to wait because he came to talk. The young man answered him. He knew that they could not be destroyed. They were heroes. These wounds healed in 20 seconds, and if destroyed he lived in 40 seconds, they could not defeat them. Yatsu turned to her. She came out and asked him to shut up. It was his personal decision. It has nothing to do with the heroes. The man asked again. The girl said that he was a fool because he accepted the religion of Arteros. The warriors were surprised, but the guy confirmed. The topic of conversation, they have 3 followers of Arteros. It is necessary to convey them to him, or he, the immortal, will begin to spread the teachings of Arteros in this world. People will hear his heroic voice. The time is not far off when the religion of Arteros will fill this world. But if they hand them over to him now, he won't do it. The deadline is before sunrise, and if not, they will disappear in agony. He will return here soon and they will have to give the final decision. The guy started laughing evilly and said goodbye to the soldiers and also called the girl, who asked him to shut up again. The soldiers were shocked and did not know what to say. The moon illuminated the sky with its light, and at this time there were heated arguments. One of the warriors asked what they would do. The men exclaimed loudly with indignation. He did not like this conversation. Camelot said that if the immortal hero began to spread this heresy, the expedition would be useless. He did not know what to do with them, but it was good that there were fewer of them. The heroes cannot disappear, but the pit is like a prison for them from which they cannot escape. Therefore, even at night, they need to figure out how to catch them. One of the warriors asked how they would do it. The man pointed something at the warriors, who were shocked. Tatte came out of the darkness. She greeted them again and asked if they had forgotten about her. The warriors were surprised and loudly shouted, "You." The girl asked to be quiet because she came secretly. Camelot asked why she came. The girl answered, "Can't you see that she had problems with this team for a long time?" The man confirmed that he had noticed this, but he was worried that this was the reason she had decided to sell them. The girl said that there were 2 of them now, thanks to her. She would like to go over to their side, and as proof of loyalty she was ready to sleep with them. The girl asked if they would go right now. Vo said that she couldn't be trusted. What if she showed up and said such things? He wondered how she would prove that it was true. He realized that she wanted to release the prisoners from the cart. The girl said that if she did not believe, they could go to the crib, and there he would find out whether she was lying or not. Camelot said that they did not have time for these tests. But the warriors did not know what to do. The man said that one of them would stay to guard. The 2 of them would go and set her trap. They would tie her up because he was in the cart, and Tatte did not know whether she had managed to deceive him or not. Yatsu's plan to save the 4 prisoners. The girl said that there was only a little time left. They would arrive in a minute. 1 minute passed. The man asked again how much longer they had to go. The girl said that she had only a little time left. They would arrive in 30 seconds. Camelot nodded to the warrior nodded back. He took out his sword and plunged it into her. 40 seconds remained until rebirth. Camelot said that he knew she was lying to them. The warrior said that they needed to return quickly. Notes are also useful. How to bind heroes. Heroes are easiest to destroy first and bind and immobilize the body until he is revived. The man said that in a little while they would reach the cart. Right there, the 2 men stood with their mouths open in surprise. They could not believe what had happened. The kitchen knife, stained with something, was in the guy's hand. He smiled and said, "Welcome back." He had bad news for them. Their mission had just ended, so they could return to their homeland. The defeated warrior groaned in pain. Camelot exclaimed that they were the servants of the Arteros church. He destroyed both the child and the adult and the missionary. The girl laughed and asked if they were feeling confused now. After all, it is true that 3 of Kahebla's squad disappeared and that 2 of the heroes fell into the pit. But it is a lie that Yotsuya became a servant of the Arteros church. The guy said he came here to take revenge for all 5 of his comrades. As the only survivor, Camelot asked him to stop. He was already screaming. Well, the guy just said that this missionary was finished. The body was enveloped in flames. The man who had not yet left the body began to writhe in pain. He made strange sounds. The man realized that he had poured oil on him and destroyed him alive. The guy wanted to add something else. He wanted to set fire to the horses' seats. The horses began to groan in pain and try to escape. Camelot ordered to catch up with them, and the warrior did not understand what to do with the hero. This stick was a staff. The girl ordered the flame to appear. The warriors shouted about the magic fire and tried to reach Tatte. He grabbed her by the robe. The warrior grabbed the girl's robe more tightly and tried to pull it off. But she immediately chose to remove the robe in her flying tablet. The girl was left in only her underwear, and the warrior did not understand how this happened. She jumped over the fire and felt hot. She almost burned her wrist, but after she threw off the rope it got better. The girl put her robe back on and mounted her horse. The guy said that they would probably take the cart with the things for themselves. The boys shouted, "Try to catch up." Camelot only saw that their carts were gone. He said that they were going to them. In order to go faster after them, the warrior accepted the order. Yatsu asked if he was chasing them. The girl told him that they were chasing so fast that their heels were shining. The girl was glad that they hadn't checked the bodies, otherwise everything would have gone down the drain. It was almost immediately clear that there were no bodies there but sandbags. The girl saw that the boy had regained consciousness. She asked him if his name was Riri. The boy thanked them for saving his life. The boy said that there was no need for gratitude. Yatsu said they needed to prepare 3 dolls that resembled bodies. They made shapes out of things that resembled people. They had to be the size of the prisoners, and then they simply put their clothes on top. They made heads look like they were hidden in bags. Besides, it was night, and of course it would have been better to mix these dolls with real bodies, but what was. Yotsui looked at the girl who said that then they would have to actually destroy someone, and they had never destroyed anyone before. The guy agreed, saying that he was a little curious about what it would be like to destroy someone. The girl wasn't talking about that. She asked if he thought the world was just a game. The guy didn't argue, because all the people around them were too similar to real people, not NPCs. But it was worth remembering both sensations. Pain, for example, they almost didn't feel. Besides, they could literally get weapons and things out of thin air. Tatte replied that in any case she wouldn't be the one doing the destroying, so she didn't care. But if this was a game, then to avoid war you could destroy a couple of people. But he would say that they had to do it because this was the 5th time they had come here. Besides, since their friend had asked them to do it, they couldn't refuse. And one of their friends had already been destroyed, so they simply had to take revenge. The girl was scared and said that he was the last one of them who had come to the earth, from whom she wanted to hear this. She certainly agreed that if it was a game, it was worth destroying those who did the same to him. But then she didn't consider them heroes. The guy didn't understand her words. He took as an example a bus that is about to fall off a cliff, and the weight of the passengers makes it fall down and everyone disappears. And they are the 4 heroes who were summoned to this world, who accidentally ended up on that bus. The girl showed that this was a terrible comparison, although that is exactly what it turned out to be. At this very moment in this very place he made his choice. His rank dropped to 7th. The stars twinkled in the sky. The horse's body lay breathless on the ground. The warriors caught up with the cart a little disappointed. The warrior said that they were lucky at least to have found the cart. Camelot was very angry and slammed his fist into the ground. The man pounded the ground, shouting the same word. He remembered the ceremony at the beginning of the expedition. The king had said quiet, and all the warriors had followed the command. All the warriors were surprised that the king would personally conduct the ceremony, and he said that the most devoted had gathered, and seeing them he was convinced that they would undoubtedly cope with the task. He counted on their success and asked us to try to show ourselves in the best possible way. Camelot began to cry. He understood that he could not live up to the king's expectations. Birdie messaged for the king and watched her go. He couldn't even imagine how the king would punish them for such a failure of the mission. Then the 2 of them could only accept their fate. The man looked up and saw that his companion was attacked. The one who destroyed the warrior laughed and said that the man was wrong. After all, it would be Kahebla who would punish them both. Camelot couldn't believe that she was alive. It was impossible. He didn't understand where she came from. The girl told him to take a weapon. The man began to look for a weapon in confusion. He looked into the cart and saw an axe. The girl decided to tell him something. 3 of our Tyrian were alive, and the burned one, who was in black clothes, was his subordinate. The man flew at the girl screaming. But the girl got ahead of him, and at the moment of his blow she swiped the ball at his hand. The hand with the axe no longer belonged to the man. The girl turned around and swung for another blow and deprived him of his other hand. Kahebla jumped and the man looked at her. The girl raised her hand for another blow, and the man was left without one leg. The man fell down from surprise and screamed very loudly. The girl looked at him menacingly and asked what his last word was. The man started to spin around and eventually looked at the girl. He got angry and said what he wanted. He wanted to make the world a safer place. He repeated that he wanted to make the world safer. And at that moment the girl struck, destroying Camelot. She said that it meant that your safety lay in the fact that my comrades had to disappear. So their safe world will come when they are all destroyed. The royal palace of Diok. The king asked what it meant. That squad of 3 still couldn't cope. He considered them cabbage rolls because they just needed to get back faster. The subordinates asked if they should send a rescue party. The king asked in response how many of them survived there. And for the sake of 2 they will not strain themselves. The subordinate completely agreed with him. But he also said that there would remain an unpleasant moment. The saviors of the hopes of all mankind. The hero has now become our enemy. although this may be an isolated case when a fool like Kamert angered him, but there is a risk that this will not end. The king replied that is, they might have to fight the hero, the subordinate confirmed. The king asked to think of a way they could destroy the hero. The subordinate said that everything would be done and smiled maliciously. Yatsu didn't know the contents of the letter yet, and it was impossible to say whether they had succeeded or not. The knight thought so too. The boy remembered about the cargo. He wanted to do 3 things. Tatte asked which ones. The route of the Kakazaki team lay through Maranboy to Raidadob. There they did not learn that nothing needed to be delivered to the city. As they wanted, they found a courier service office. Together with its representative, they headed to their destination. Shindo said that at this rate, they would arrive at their destination ahead of schedule. Hakazaki asked if it was really enough to just guard the courier. The girl answered her that if she didn't complete the quest in this way, she would feel uneasy because of the previous difficulties. It seemed too easy to her. A little more and the quest will be completed, although before that, while moving deeper into the country, they barely had time. The girls were surprised. The task with the cargo was already completed. Yatsu's team in Raidadob. His team had 3 options for delivering the cargo. The first was 3 missionaries of the Altero's religion. Since it is not banned in Raidadob, they could become bargaining chips, but upon arrival in the city, the task was not completed. They were most likely considered refugees, guests, or travelers. The second option was the belongings of departed royal soldiers, but no merchant agreed to take these things. They could be sold, which means the items were a commodity, so the quest could not be completed. Heads are an old phrase that has existed in Japan since the Sengoku era. It was not clear whose head was to be brought, so all were delivered. But they were all accepted along with information about the actions of the royal soldiers in the vicinity of Maranboy. The man thanked them for the information they provided about their plans, but he said that their heads did not need to be brought. At that moment, the quest was completed. Yatsu thought that this was some kind of cheating by the game master, because who would have thought that the third option would be correct, or more correctly, the fourth? The game master knew that the players would deliver the heads of the royal soldiers instead of the destination, so he made them the cargo, and the cargo corresponded to the quest completion conditions. Yatsu and Kahebla were standing on the seashore. The girl asked him if he would go alone right away. He replied that he needed to explore the area. She thought that they should say goodbye. The guy confirmed and said it was nice to deal with her. The girl was also pleased. They shook hands at sunrise. The girl closed and opened her eyes and saw the guy running away. She said goodbye to him, calling him a lone hero. One of the men said that they had to lift the boat as high as possible onto the land. He asked to look at the clouds because there would be a storm. There are 2 hours left until the end of the quest. At first, everything was going well. 5% of the map is not so easy to pass. At this pace, they should make it. It began to snow. The main character split up to successfully complete the quest. The guy successfully delivered the servants of the Altero's church as cargo along with the heads of the knights. All that was left was to follow the map. But suddenly, a cold cyclone appeared on the horizon. Kahebla and Manhua were sitting at the table and looking at the falling snow with a surprised face. Yotsui was irritated because it was getting dark and soon it would be night, and the temperature was getting lower and lower. He thought that he would freeze, and even if he disappeared from the cold and waited for rebirth, the body would cool down even more during this time. He wondered if he would be able to resurrect at all. He was too careless. He thought that something was not needed this area. He did not think that according to the scenario it would snow. Since there is no clothing limitation, so you can wear it in any quantity, but since everyone changed their class twice, no one could wear anything except basic things. The most sensitive book temperature turned out to be Shindo. Meanwhile, she was thinking about what everyone else was doing. According to the map, everyone's movement had slowed down a lot, especially the other girls. She had to try after all, she had made it this far. The girl remembered all the difficult moments. She remembered telling Yatsu to save her. She had come this far and she wouldn't just disappear. There were 18 hours left until the end of the quest. Several hours had already passed and the number wasn't increasing. At this rate, Tatte fell to her knees. There was no way they could keep up. She walked but suddenly turned around. Her legs wouldn't obey her body, her heart was frozen. She thought it was the end. The girl smiled and apparently she was reassuring herself. And like, it was really hard for this cold and so far away. Even if I continue walking, it will still disappear. So it's better to disappear without making any effort. She repeated her words several times. The girl remembered the guy who said that she had to protect at any cost, and even parting with her life was quite logical. She realized that the boy had already realized it. Tatte understood her role in all of this. She always joined someone strong, ensuring her safety. She remembered everyone she had joined. And if you think about it, then apparently she joined them because they were strong. And she decided that the rest of us did the same because she was sure of it. The girl thought that shouldn't they be having fun now? Why were they so different from each other now? She understood her situation and wanted to understand it, but the difference between them was much greater than she thought. The girl sat down in the snow and decided to rest a little. If they continue like this, they will not make it. Therefore, no one goes forward, then if she does not go, no one will be offended. Yatsu understood that they would not make it in time. Even professional climbers on a snowy mountain would not have made it in time. He understood that they, amateurs, if we cannot even maintain body temperature, then what should they do? He looked at the weapons he had and realized that there was nothing that would help. The guy started getting angry and realized that he would have to wait out this snowstorm because there was no other way. If he continued to go further, he was guaranteed to disappear. The player's body after several resurrections was so cold that subsequent resurrection became impossible. Shindo understood that if she stopped, the girl was serious, but she understood that she had to wait for the resurrection. There was a guy sitting in a snowdrift trying to warm up. He was serious. And in another snowdrift sat Tatte, who was already freezing. Yes, the end of the quest was 4 hours away. Quest to explore 5% of the map, progress 4.97%. Ghost Shindo realized that the snow was falling lighter and it was getting a little lighter, which meant that morning had arrived. She tried to move her body because it was her body. In the snowdrift, Tatte wanted to just rewatch the magical girls one last time. She watched them last year and even cried while watching the last episode. The girl looked up. In front of her stood a girl who was unhappy that she had decided to sleep. It was the magician Violet. The girl denied it because she was sleeping and it was an illusion. If you think about it, now she seems like a normal anime character, but she used to admire them. This illusion appeared because she wanted to see her one last time. An illusion, or rather an obsession. Violet asked if she remembered what Rose did at the end of Season 1, when she was struck by the Demon King Rukafer's lightning. Tatte remembered. The girl continued, did she remember what Rose did at the end of the second season when she was hit by the energy flow of Ouroboros? Violet decided to ask again, did she really learn nothing from watching them? The girl said that the magical sisters always rise again for the love of the hopes of the children of the world. Violet disappeared and Tatte laughed and activated fire magic. The girl's nose was running and she was able to warm herself up. She was very cold. The snow became heavier. The guy crawled in a snow tunnel and was glad that there were earthworms, similar in thickness to a person. He was going to follow him because it was much faster than on the surface. There were 15 minutes and 20 seconds left until the end of the quest. 5% map exploration quest, progress 4.98%. In these 4 hours, Yotsuya crawled 2 kilometers and 300 meters. Yuka walked 400 meters. There were about 25 kilometers left to go before completing the quest. It was unrealistic. Yuka had long since said goodbye to the idea of returning home. Her heart sank into a 2D illusion. She saw all the sorceresses, but she couldn't move forward in the end. She stopped when she reached a certain point. Then a girl on a big cat came up. She asked why she was sleeping here. The girl also realized that she was also a player. She thought that these were new characters and asked how many times she had already been here. The girl realized that she was still a newbie because she was only the 4th time in this world. Tatte was surprised. The girl realized that she did not have time and decided to speed up a little. She asked the hero if she was holding on tightly. The unknown girl began to address the mistress of the winds, Sylph, asking to grant her strength and serve her Fatina. The girl waved her staff and they jumped up. And she was the first witch Yuko had met besides other players. The quest to explore the map is 5% complete. Shindo was surprised because it couldn't be. They were alive and they made it. Everyone was surprised. Tatte thought that this was an opportunity to take all the credit for herself. She showed her class and the game master appeared behind her. The girl shouted at him not to appear behind her like that. He started saying that since they had done it, he would answer one of their questions. The girl didn't understand why there was only one question because they had been through so much. Even though they had been helped at the very last moment and essentially, they wouldn't have coped, but still, why had they disappeared so many times? What kind of person did she meet at the very end? But that was a rare case. She remembered her question to Yatsu and asked the master. The game master was silent at first, but answered that this world is a parallel world to theirs. Yotsui asked himself this question. Let's say at a fork in the road, a person turns right, and let's assume that there is an option in which the person turns left. And the option in which they turn left will be a parallel world. Thus, the number of parallel worlds will be equal to the number of options for the development of this or that event. The guy understood the principle and thought that if he turned left, he would have an accident and disappear. In that case, in a parallel world, they would be alive. And if such a choice was made not today, but 3 years ago, then in a parallel world you would not have existed for 3 years already. And if one of the parents made such a choice in their youth, then in a parallel world one of them would disappear in the past, and of course they would not have been born. Thus, the parallel world will develop all this time and events will follow their course. This is a branch of the parallel world, developed separately from the moment of the origin of the universe itself. If we consider that the universe is, like, already 130 billion years old, it turns out that the number of such parallel worlds tends to infinity. But since parallel measures cannot be explored in the usual way, this is only one possible concept of a parallel world. Yatsu understood, but why such a long explanation? He did not understand what he wanted to say with all this. However, it became possible for them to use a special method to move to the parallel world we need. A special method of wavelength similarity. One day, about 5 billion years ago, a race appeared that strongly resembled modern humans. And the root passed a similar history to the current human, and in other words, another earthly civilization. They developed on another planet since they appeared before the Earth because it is only 4,600,000,000 years old. And only after that they flew to it. A different molecular composition, a different ecosystem, a highly intelligent life form, but one day they decided to live in a virtual world very similar to planet Earth. The guy didn't understand why virtual, there you need the appropriate clothes and weapons in bodies from which not even blood comes. Then especially the way blood did not come only from players, allows not only to launch air into the enemy's body. What monsters, what animals and even people, if only the players in that world are virtual, then all the others are there physically. The master spread his arms and said that they asked themselves. Tatte did not understand what he was nervous about. She turned around in surprise and saw Yatsu's frightened face. If the inhabitants of that world are not artificial intelligence, but earthlings from another world, then it turns out that he destroyed people. Yatsu will have to take the full weight of the sin he committed in the virtual world at the age of 14. The boy tried to accept the fact that he had destroyed people. He didn't understand why he hadn't thought of it. A hysterical smile appeared on his face. He couldn't stop shaking. He hated people. Yatsu knew he had only killed one person and his heart was beating like crazy. It wouldn't stop, like he was on a roller coaster or about to jump out of a parachute. He couldn't go back now. He never wanted to start. The final exams were over. The guy looked up, well, jumped because of the stomping he heard. The girl asked him to answer the message. The guy did not understand what message. He opened the phone. There was a question about what it was like to destroy a person. The answer should be honest. He asked the girl if she was the master or someone else from the future. The guy grabbed the table. The girl was silent. Finally, she answered that he had no right to ask questions. The guy realized that this was the master of the game and he had just spoken normally. Yatsu said he was halfway into the category of people who probably deserved to disappear, but he was also halfway to something else. He thought destroying him was a mistake. If he knew he was a real person, he would never have done it. And that was all. The girl asked again. The guy thought about it. He said that he had nothing more to say. The girl understood. She asked if he wanted to talk about the new player. The guy didn't understand why. She wanted him to meet him beforehand. He wanted to know what she meant when she said to win Taketate's heart. But the girl said that he couldn't ask questions. Everything was, as she said, without any hidden meaning. The guy didn't understand what the master told him. To save her girls from the toilet to hit on her, he didn't remember that. The girl asked him again if he wanted to meet him. The guy agreed and the girl gave him a cap. Yatsu took the cap and asked where they were going. A train passed by, people were walking along the street, they were sitting in a cafe. He didn't understand why they were in this Chinese restaurant. The girl drew his attention to the man at the bar, saying that he was a supplier of illegal substances, but had recently finished it. 10 seconds later, a new player will appear and destroy him to work off the debt. Someone tricked him into believing he wouldn't get caught for it. The guy was angry because in 10 seconds he would destroy the guy. The girl asked to wait because the new player Keita Torai, a man 19 years old. His brother Shuji 14 was also part of the plan. The boy was surprised because he was his age. The countdown began. The door swung open and 3 masked men entered the restaurant. The first masked man spotted the man he needed and said he would get it. Yatsu didn't understand which of them was the right man. The guy was angry and stuck his leg right in front of the masked bandit, causing him to fall. The bandit didn't understand why the hell he fell. Yatsu said he shouldn't destroy it. He didn't know what happened, but he thinks he was tricked. They lied to him about not getting caught. The bandit hit the guy in the leg, shouting for him to shut his mouth. Yatsu rolled over in pain and at the same moment hit the bandit in the stomach so hard that he flew off. The guy grabbed the bat. Things were bad. He couldn't stand fools who wouldn't listen to him. And if they were that stupid, it was no wonder they were tricked into coming here. The guy hit one of the bandits on the head and at the same moment received a blow to the arm. But then he hit the one who hit him on the arm with his back. A guy with a bat was flying at Yotsu who shouted his brother's name. He was serious. The guy remembered that that was his brother's name, so it was that same Keita. The bandit swung his bat, but Yotsu immediately turned right into his opponent's bat, thereby breaking both bats, and both guys had a shard of a bat in their hands. Keita was about to swing his fist, and Yotsu was holding it in the guy's face, but he grabbed the fist and still flew away. When Yotsu was falling, he pulled the mask off the bandit, who immediately covered himself with his hand. The guy said their target had escaped and that they had to get out with his brother before the cops arrived. But Keita wanted to take him out, he had to do it. He remembered the man saying that even the interest wouldn't cover it, and the girl saying that she would pay next month. The man said that she had been doing this for over 10 years and that she couldn't work in clubs forever. That was the end for her. Keita said to get out of the way. The same man turned to the two brothers and told them to come to him because he had a job for them. If they did as he said, they would cover their debts in a month. The guy kept saying that he had to destroy him. He wondered why he was in his way. The guy was a drug dealer and no one would care if he disappeared. The guy didn't understand why he was protecting him. But Yotsu didn't care who he was, he wouldn't let him be destroyed. The boy was shocked by his words. The man sitting in the truck didn't understand what was going on. He repeated his question, but the other man didn't know and there was some schoolboy there. Yotsu got hit in the face but immediately responded with a similar blow. Then the guy kicked him in the stomach so that he twisted around his leg. Keita was angry. The guy kept repeating the same thing, that he had to destroy him. Yotsu didn't let him pass and received multiple blows in his direction. The guys calmed down and exhaled. At that moment, Keita was tapped on the shoulder, telling him to step back. The man told him not to lie to him and pointed the gun at him. Keita looked at the man reproachfully, and Yotsu stood in shock because the man had a gun. Suddenly, the girl turned to the guy, and the man realized that he was a child. The girl asked if he wanted to take advantage of it and handed him the glove. The guy pulled it on his hand and smiled more confidently. At the same moment, Yotsu made a dash towards them. The boy shouted to stop using stop magic. A shudder ran through the entire restaurant. The man was smiling, but his body was not obeying him. Yotsu jumped towards the people, snatching the gun from the man's hands, and he hit him too. There were blood spatters everywhere. The guy was trying to catch his breath, and the other one was standing there, surprised. The man was unconscious. Keita said that this guy had been terrorizing his family for years and didn't understand what had just happened. The police finally arrived. Yotsu asked the boy why he hadn't escaped yet. Keita asked him to wait. He didn't understand who this psychopath was and why he let him and his brother escape. The man took the gun and pointed it at Yotsu. But Keita kicked the gun out of his hand. The man didn't understand why he did that because he owed him his life. The guy told him to shut up and said that he lost to the kid and now he wanted to shoot him in the back. That was the end for him. Keita hit him on the head. Yotsu and the girl were standing on the roof. The guy asked what they were doing there. She replied that she just wanted to talk for a while. He stopped the irreversible action today. Could it mean that he understood the value of life? The guy continued that, as she said, saving Tatte helped them later. She was the first one to give them 5% map coverage. She went all the way to return to a reality without her naked photos. Figuratively speaking, it ultimately increased their chances of surviving the mission. And thanks to this, their new player is in a reality where he and his brother are not in prison, and he hopes to go home. Yotsu asked, smiling, "What is it, after all? Someone stupid enough to be deceived into agreeing to destruction deserves destruction." Watched from the roof as the police took the man away, it looked like the two brothers were gone. That was good. He asked if he knew what he was thinking. Everyone had to disappear, starting with the least important. He wouldn't have needed the blonde if he wasn't a player. But he wanted to increase Shindo and Hakazaki's chances of survival as much as he could, even if it was just a little. He was putting a price on human life because he was just judging them as an anonymous internet troll. She asked him who he thought he was. The guy had a puzzled look on his face. He replied that he was nobody, he was just a kid. Just a stupid kid with his dreams. If you look at it objectively, then he was definitely wrong and he understood it. But he didn't know it felt real. That's how he felt. He felt like everyone in society was wrong and he was the only one right. And yes, he also knows that he's just a kid who thinks too much. His open palm, pity in a fist. He just fights for what he believes in. That's how it was and that's how it will be. Keita tried to catch his breath. He led his brother along, holding his hand. July 19th, they were transported to a parallel world which surprised everyone. Shindo noticed the guy Yotsuya was talking about. Keita didn't understand what was happening. The fifth round began. 2 minutes later, The game master was spinning the roulette wheel, wondering what class the fifth player, Keita, would be. He asked for a drum roll. Yotsuya hoped for something weak. Keita was given the copy warrior. Considering his physical skills, he might be the strongest of them, which did not please Yatsu. Quest, bring the symbol of Jiffon to Wakedam. Yatsu said that maybe they should go to Courtnal to figure out what this quest is. Shindo, explain everything to Torai first. Kato said he didn't like that tone of his. A new fast travel system was delivered. Players can instantly return to any places they visited before. Shindo was sure he was confused. She suggested just going over the basics for him. Yatsu said, isn't saving time more important than his stress? Keita asked to fill him in first, or he wasn't going to do this fast food or something. Shindo was right, but Yatsu corrected the guy, saying fast food wasn't fast food. The boy realized that they were heroes and they were trying not to disappear. Shindo was glad that he understood quickly, because this was a new record. The guy praised himself, but he was kicked out of middle school, so he's too dumb to understand complicated things. Yatsu said that he couldn't be kicked out of middle school because it's compulsory. The boy replied that he thought he was strong for a kid, but he was just showing off. Yatsu said that if he was done talking, then he should start preparing for a quick move. Keita said he wanted to end their fight. He wanted to see what his new body could do. Yatsu didn't want to do it, but the boy threatened to not do the task. Yatsu replied that his class made him stronger. He gave in and asked for it to be done quickly. The boy stretched and everyone was silent. Shindo apologized. He asked to do that thing again, the one that froze them. Yatsuya said he only had enough mana for one time. The guy lunged like last time and told him to bow down to him. Keita was surprised and fell to his knees. He was shocked. Yatsu swung his leg, hit him on the chin and thought he missed. Well, the guy fell on his back. And then he hit Yatsuya on the head. The girls were surprised. Keita laughed and said that it looked like he won and continued to hit him. Yatsuya thought it was low because he was hitting a man who was down. Courtnal time left until next fast travel, 23:59 minutes. Several years had passed between the third and fourth rounds. He wondered when it was now. Was Kahebla still here? Near the Knights Guild, Yotsui asked if Kahebla was here now, but he was told that she would return in the evening. The guy said that they would return later. In the meantime, they needed to look for information about the quest. Their quest, bring the symbol of Jiffon to Wakedam. Apparently, they have to sail to Jiffon Island to find out what it is. They will fast travel to Ladodri tomorrow to rent a boat there. This evening, it was 17:00 until the next fast travel. Kahebla was walking. The night had gone through many emotions, but she was glad to see them again. After all, 15 years had passed. All four heroes were surprised that 15 years had passed. The girl turned to the children, saying that there was nothing to worry about and that they should say hello. Kahebla's children peeked out from under their mother's skirt and the girl laughed, saying that they were hers and asked if they were cute. The four heroes were surprised by her relaxedness. The girl said that she left the Knights about 7 years ago. Yatsuya didn't understand what was happening. Night had fallen, the children were asleep. The girl said that she wanted to become the strongest knight in the world, wanted to be like her father and brothers whom she admired, but she didn't know the difference between means and ends. For them, strength was a means to protect the land, but for her, strength was the goal itself. She wanted to be strong, no matter what it meant. It was a goal that could not be achieved while you were burning with it. Well, when she lost her right arm in battle, there was nothing left in her heart to keep that fire going. Losing her arm was the end of her dream. She became weak when she returned from their quest. Diok sought to unite the entire continent by becoming stronger. Courtnal sent envoys to neighboring countries, fighting to create a coalition. A year later, Diok was against the power of their 22 allied countries, a large-scale war. She participated in 4 campaigns. After the battle, what she saw was a living hell. Arrows were flying from the sky. 7 out of 10 soldiers died under a hail of stones and arrows. None of their sword training mattered. It was useless against an airstrike. A decade of training meant nothing. When the arrows ran out, close combat began. Well, it was a battle of 2 huge forces. If someone attacks from behind while you are fighting with another, then you are destroyed. When people disappear in such numbers, they no longer look like people. Just things, their identities erased, each just another number on the death list. The details of their destruction lost to history. 200,000 people had disappeared in the last 14 years. The coalition had lost 50,000. They knew Diok had lost 3 times that. Rotting bodies spread disease, destroyed farmers and their rotting fields. More than half of the missing Diok were said to be civilians. Raise the sword, then bring it down, and behold, you have destroyed a man. She destroyed more than 30 soldiers in 4 campaigns, or in truth, 3 campaigns. The 4th came a year after she gave birth to her first child. As soon as she took her and started raising her, she lost her grip. The realization of how hard it was to raise a child made her hesitate for a moment. That's how she lost her right arm. She became weak. Yatsu thought that breaking something was 100 times easier than building it. Shindo said that he was right. She thought that raising children was 100, no, 10,000 times harder than destroying someone. Kyusu confirmed and asked not to be so strict with herself because she had not weakened at all. His inspiring speech touched his own heart. The girl asked if they really thought so. Everyone confirmed it. Kahable looked very much like Yatsu. But in these 15 years she experienced war, she had children, and she changed. Will he also end up like this later? Maybe not completely, if he can't have children. Keita said he delivered a baby once. Yatsu was surprised. When he was about 5, her mother had gone into labor. He was the only one there, so he had to reach out and pull the dude out. Shindo thought it was cool and asked how he was now. The guy replied that he was fine about her age. He should be in the 3rd year of middle school if he went there. The girl replied that it was really great and asked if they got along with each other. Keita replied that they got along better than most. He brought it, so he was almost his servant. Hakazaki said that servant was probably not the best wording and asked what about his father since he didn't mention him. He told her that he only had a mother. Yatsu and thought he was born healthy, never had serious illnesses, his parents were still with him, they were definitely provided for, he had no difficulties in life. Keita continued, just mom and them, they had been in debt for decades. He was asked to take down a guy last week. He would make a ton of money and was told he would never get caught. The girls were surprised by his words. The guy went on, he'd never done this before, but he and his brother went there, and this guy was there and he beat everyone, including that money lender. He let them go. And they didn't arrest that money lender, and he thinks the debts are forgiven too. As if nothing had been done to him in the end, and they had also been paid a little. The guy turned to Yatsu. He had paid him in the morning for defeating his brother, but he thanked him for the past week. He would like to thank him on behalf of his mother and brother because he really helped them. Yatsuya was shocked. He remembered Shindo's words about the first impression. The boy gritted his teeth. He knew nothing of what it was like to live in poverty, like everyone else at the table. He would never have the power of such words as they did, even if he wanted to become stronger than everyone else. Kahable with a sad face remembered her husband, who disappeared in a battle 5 years ago. The guy said that his old man was alive. The girls began to sympathize. The knight remembered the white-haired Rosian child and asked if they knew what he was like now. He became the leader of the fighters. Because Yatsu saved him, so he called himself the hero's chosen one. They take the heads of damaged enemies and line them up in the streets. He learned this from Yatsu. He admired him and wanted to do as the heroes did in their land. His words and actions shaped the history of this world. It was night outside, all the heroes were sleeping in the common room. The door creaked and Kakabla appeared behind it. The next fast travel time was 0700. The guy asked where they were. The girl said they were on the city wall. She often climbed up there when she was on patrol. She liked to watch the sunrise from there. She thought it might be nice to see him with him before he left. She thought she would never see him again. He remembered their last conversation and said that they had some kind of senseless farewell. For him, she was just an NPC. He thought that he would see her again very soon. The guy apologized for getting her and Bihmsburg involved. After all, he wouldn't have disappeared if he hadn't taken them with them. The girl looked at him sadly and said that she had never traveled so long or so far in her life, and she would probably never do it again. She recalled all the moments spent with the heroes and said that it was hard, bitter, sweet, painful, but it was her youth. And if I were to sum it up in one word, it would be the word youth. She thought those memories had helped her get through that hell on the battlefield. She thanked him for dragging her into it. The guy wondered if she really meant what she said. Had he really helped her? The girl said they would be perfect for each other. Well, the guy said he thought they were similar then, but not now. Kahable asked if they told him what happened after he lost consciousness from magical exhaustion. The guy didn't know. The girl thought about it, blushed, and said what a pity. The boy opened his eyes and the girl said that she loved him. She started crying and apologized for growing old before him. She asked him if everything was okay. The boy was silent but said that everything was fine. Shindo slid down the wall and said that they had to go. Hakazaki wanted to go too. In this world, so much time passes with each completed task. The girl thought it would be funny to look at them but to discuss unhappy lovers. Suddenly the girls were called out. It was G. They meet people all the time only to leave them again. The man said they saved his village from a troll. He couldn't thank them enough for that. Kyusu knew who it was. Memories flashed through her mind and she began to cry. It was nice to see him again. The game master seemed to be making fun of them. What was the point of the quests? The girl asked how his life was because each of their meetings was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Yatsu thanked Kahable for everything. 6 days later, they were heading to Jiffon Island, a scary place. The man said there were volcanoes, random earthquakes. It was called the Island of Disasters. Another man said they said it was run by monsters, and he asked if they were heading there because they had seen the advertisements for mercenaries. In the cargo bay sat 3 warriors who opened their eyes, and again they were moving on. On the island, everyone was met by 2 girls who joyfully welcomed them to the island of Jiffon. They were Wakidam and they welcomed. Now they were sure to win, they were moving on to new adventures. Round 5 was about to begin. Yatsu looked at the girls and observed their behavior. He thought that their enthusiasm was like being flushed down the toilet. The guy remembered how a minute ago they were met by 2 beautiful girls who were very polite and well-mannered. The ritual dancers of the Wakidam, it seems they sent a request to the mercenaries. 5 accepted, including 3 from their ship. Yatsu said that their quest was to bring the symbol of Jiffon to Wakidama. With Jiffon everything is clear, but what is Wakidama, he asked. The girls seemed disappointed that they weren't mercenaries for their mission. Shindo asked what the Jiffon symbol was. Jana got angry and asked why they had to tell all this. Ai said that they weren't even mercenaries. Keita asked if the girls wanted a drink. Yatsuya told them to shut up before it turned into even more of a farce. Keita asked why the girls were so angry. The girls replied that it was because they were not there at their request. Keita said they would do it and asked what about a date. The guys stood behind and were shocked by what they saw. The girls pointed to a buffalo standing nearby and said that it was the symbol of Jiffon. This meant that the boys needed to sacrifice a buffalo as an offering to their gods at the harvest festival, they thought. But it turned out that right now it was impossible to take the lives of their buffaloes, even as a sacrifice at Wakidamo. The girls suggested going north and the boys had to understand what they were talking about. Having reached the place, the girls asked if they could see the tower. Kumamo Fortress is an impregnable fortress built by their outstanding architects 400 years ago. 5 years ago, a group of foreigners invaded their island and captured the fortress. Yatsu said that this fortress was similar to the Kumamoto Fortress. Ai said that here she was in person. Looking closely, the boys saw orcs. Among them was the queen of the tribe. The queen's danger was level C, and the other 2, ordinary orcs, level D. They were Il's gibbon orcs. The girls reported that it was her strength and the strength of her 14 children. The queen was much larger than them. The girls continued to tell that after their appearance they fought for another year. More than 300 locals lost their lives and the rest fled. The locals surrendered to the queen, with whom they could negotiate. So the villagers offered them buffalo instead of themselves. This of course saved them from being eaten, but almost all the buffalo went to feed the ogres. The orcs own all the buffaloes. That's why there are so few of them, the boys concluded. Ai asked if they now understood why they needed mercenaries. Their task is to take the lives of all the orcs. Yatsu asked why it was necessary to do this now. Yana replied that they realized that the orcs were increasing in number every year. Yatsu reported that just like humans, orcs reproduce in good conditions. Ai said that this is a critical number. Even if there is one more, they will not have enough buffalo for them. They must squeeze them out faster than they squeeze them out. In 11 days at the harvest festival, they will come to take their buffalo. The boys must destroy them all, starting with the queen. In a strange turn of events, their work will help them with the quest. Keita asked again if they just needed to beat up the orcs, then said that it was very easy. If you add up all the orcs, Yatsu thought, their threat level rises to 80. That means they'll need about 110 people to defeat the orcs. Hakazaki asked the girls what the Wakidam do. Ai replied that they perform ritual dances during the sowing of crops and are responsible for collecting sacrifices at the festival. Yatsuki said, "Can someone else do it?" The girls said no. The additional condition was that they had to survive. The guy said they had about 800 residents and 40 buffalo, and it was hard enough to defeat the orcs. Would they be able to do it? He looked at the map. They came to the training ground. The employer asked if they needed to be briefed. They had to hit the logs without going inside a 2-meter circle. The mercenary's name was Cantle. He became the leader, even though he arrived with them. He is the oldest of the warriors and the only one with experience fighting orcs. Orcs are 3 meters tall and their kill zone is 2 meters. A direct hit from them is lethal. He tied these logs together as a simulated skin. If he couldn't hit them, they were useless in battle. Yatsu was reminded of the battle with the troll. With such a short weapon, he will never damage them. Players can only use weapons of their own profession. Shindo and Keita passed. As a result, 3 of them were left in the rear. He hoped that they could use a bow, but if they couldn't even do that, Yatsu ran to level up. He couldn't sit around like this. Keita was left alone with Shindo and decided to get to know each other better. He would get stronger and cope. He asked if there were any more monsters. The girls said there were none. Experience is mostly gained from defeating monsters, while wizards gain experience from casting spells, and a little bit of replay is gained from cooking. Since he was a farmer, he could get paid for working in the field. The girl said that her family had won. The field was large. Tatte hadn't asked for it, but the garden was nice. Yatsu had helped his grandmother in the fields as a child. Hakazaki didn't know about it. The earthquake began. Everyone was shaking. The earthquake was about 4 points. The girls were surprised that the guests did not react. For them, it was ordinary. AI did not think that they were from such a place. So many fruits were dropped, the guy thought they could grow even bigger. But the soil was not very fertile, so the fruits were small. All their soil was volcanic rock and ash. The girl was surprised by his knowledge. On the mainland, much of the soil had been underwater for tens of thousands of years. This meant that many sea creatures were in the soil and feeding it. And volcanic ones are formed by solidified magma, so the soil is almost not nutritious. The girl asked what could be done with it, but it was possible to use fertilizers. They used buffalo dung for this. He suggested using fertilizers made from inedible seaweed. He jumped into the water. The girl told him to be careful because it was deep. The guy was swimming and saw a lot of fish and seaweed. And the sea lava had swept up a lot of unevenness. This is the beginning of the seaweed growing easier, and all this is eaten by small fish. The guy sank to the bottom. This should work. The clams look edible, and the shells will be composted. First, you need to put the seaweed in a container and wait until it turns into cabbage. The girl asked if they couldn't just throw them on the fields. She replied that they could get moldy and cut off the soil's access to oxygen. They can be burned and sprinkled, but that's less effective. And they need to be well combined with buffalo dung. They'll be mixed later. AI hit a guy, anyone but Ayana. Her breasts were hers alone. I mean, if he wasn't looking, everything would be fine. He asked if they were always this close. AI said that if she protected her from the bad guys, no one would take her away from her. He told her not to worry because he didn't even try. So AI could be alone. Yatsu asked again and remembered that they were both 25. The girls were crushed. Ayana thought that she would get married at 18, but the train had left. All their friends were already raising children. He realized that he had hit a sore spot. The guy asked if the orcs were okay with the fact that there was no replacement for them. The girls confirmed that they had destroyed over 10 of their successors. Everyone was surprised. They needed to level up. He would cook the shellfish. Yatsu chopped up the root vegetables and beans and added fish sauce. The dish was ready, fried beans with a mixture of 3 types of shellfish and root vegetables. The girls liked it. They had to eat it all and start composting. He ate his fill. They mixed mud and seaweed, added shells, manure, and mixed it. It smelled strong, but it works the same. They said there are hot springs. There is enough temperature there to speed up the work of microbes. And he would help them with his magic of creatures. That way they would multiply faster. An hour later, the fertilizer was ready. The guy scattered compost everywhere. He thought it was hard labor. At home, they could listen to the radio. He asked if there was anything that would speed up time. Ayana said that was their thing. He thought it was a ritual dance. He had never seen anything like that. The girls wondered what it would be. Father played the flute, mother the drums, a crowd from nowhere. It was a song, a hit of the last 800 years. The girls prepared them for the song of the countless islands. And they began to sing and dance. Their song was like a turnip. The guys started singing along and supporting the girls. Yatsu was shocked. The girls sang, the guys supported. He was still shocked. It was a strange sight. The song ended and the guy shouted out that they were just a pop group. Tatte realized he had lost his cool. Hakazaki confirmed. Someone said 10 mercenaries, but half of them were heroes. The man didn't know much, but they were resurrected after disappearing, so you have to be careful with them. The big guy thanked him for the warning. For every farmer, the morning starts early. Etsuya worked hard in the field to improve his level and change his profession. All he could think about was that he had to fight the orcs. It was already the second day of training, and there were only 10 days left until the final battle. Yushindo fought the dummies, wanting only to win. The girl cut one after another, repeating in her head that she needed to hit the enemy first and then retreat. Shindo took a deep breath after defeating another doll. She looked at the crowds of people and thought that they still needed another 100 people to have any chance of winning. The local people were already making trenches and embankments, and they were also practicing archery. This was certainly very good, but Shindo still had her doubts. She knew they had already paid the mercenaries well, but they still had to work to keep from dying. Suddenly, the man who was in charge of the process shouted loudly, telling the others to stand up and get ready. He told them that it was important to hold their breath and release the bowstring a second later. The first man tried to shoot after the signal, but he failed and the arrow fell. After that, he cursed and threw the bow on the floor. The others did the same right after him. They said they wouldn't do it anymore. Shindo thought that she knew they wouldn't like it. The workers shouted that they had paid full price for the mercenaries. He told them that they should go and fight on their own. One of the mercenaries calmly said that they were not asking people to go on the attack with them. But if they shot at least one, it would increase everyone's chances. He said sternly that it was not about money, and either all the people would die or all the orcs would die, and it could not be any other way. The villagers began to argue that they were not afraid to fight the orcs, and if they lost, they would kill everyone. Others were shouting that they should just be allowed to continue their rampage. I started an argument between them. Some asked if their opponents knew how hard it was to breed them. It was like they were just giving all their effort, blood, and sweat straight to these orcs without getting a penny for it. They said that because of that they had little money. Watching this, Torai asked if they could just shut up. Shindo took a deep breath and thought about what they had been told earlier, that these were the best people on the entire island. They started arguing. Some said they still had money left and needed to hire more mercenaries, while others asked why the man didn't call his friends. Shindo tried to calm them down. She thought that people in all worlds were the same. One of the inhabitants grabbed a mercenary and shouted that they still had money, so he did not understand why there was so little. He told the guy to bring more mercenaries. The guy smiled and said he didn't think it would help. Mercenaries valued their lives more than money. Given their chances of winning, it was a miracle there were 5 crazy people willing to do it. The villagers were taken aback. Shindo wondered why these 5 people had agreed. Suddenly, Lale, who was in charge of the training process, pointed to the side and asked the others to watch. He was the second in command. The archers had pretty good eyesight, especially experienced ones like Lale. They saw that behind a small rock there was an orc who had been watching them all this time. Shindo didn't understand if the orc had noticed them. She thought that if they found out, their surprise attack would fail. Suddenly, everyone noticed that the orc was leaving. They realized that he would tell about everything. If the monsters realized that there were mercenaries here, they would be in a very bad position. Rice, still a relatively young mercenary, ran forward and shouted that he would catch the orc. Lale grinned and noted how quickly Rice ran into battle. He said that was great, then noted that it was no surprise that he had escaped from those guys too. Shindo remembered that Rice was a former soldier from a fallen country, and when it was destroyed 4 years ago, the enemy soldiers tried to capture all the survivors. Rice caught up with the orc and stood right in front of him, then exclaimed that the monster would not go any further. Shindo was surprised that he had already caught up with the monster. The next moment, the orc made a strong attack, hitting the ground. Rice jumped back, then loudly asked the guys if they could help him. The next moment, an arrow appeared in the orc's back, which flew there with a loud whistle. Shindo noted that Lale made an excellent shot. However, the girl also noticed that such a shot left only a slight wound. She was genuinely shocked by how thick the orc's skin was. The girl who arrived with Lale also pulled the bowstring. This girl was Katz. This was her first mission. Although she was a bow shooter, she was actually a swordsman. Katz also shot at the orc, but he blocked all the arrows with his hand. Shindo was surprised to notice that the monster's hands were even stronger than his back. She asked if this orc was made of metal. Shindo jumped into the air, swinging her weapon. Torai was not far behind. He raised his staff to attack. Despite the boy's aims, the monster quickly and easily dodged the attacks, after which it dealt even more damage to them. With just one blow, it defeated both Shindo and Torai. The man who was running with them bared his teeth and then rushed to attack. Using his sword, he was able to cut through the monster's flesh. Shindo was surprised to see that Cantle was doing very well. She remembered that this man was from the same country as Rice, but he was an officer, not a commoner. And right now, he was the only person who had experience fighting orcs. He struck again, cutting the orc. He had previously told the boys that in battle they must constantly be on the move. After an attack, they must retreat 6 steps to avoid being hit. It was necessary to attack only when they could also retreat. Their main goal was survival. Shindo watched the fight and noted that it wasted a lot of time, stamina, and concentration. However, even so, it was useful. With a huge sword at the ready, Zanzamer ran into battle. The man used a 2-handed weapon, and this was an extremely rare occurrence in their time. It was not a compliment, as such a weapon is very difficult to use. At that moment, Cantle asked the man what his backup weapon was. With a smile on his face, Zanzamer said that he didn't have one since he only used his 2-handed weapon. Shindo said that it was hard to just run with such a weapon, let alone fight. And using it in a battle where you can die from one blow was very dangerous. Zanzamer rushed at the orc with his weapon, while telling the others to back off. He quickly and deftly cut off the orc's fingers. Shindo watched in amazement and could not believe that he was able to cut off those steel fingers. The orc screamed loudly, holding his hands. The next moment, Cantle jumped on the orc's back and pierced his neck with his weapon. He then jumped back and landed on his feet, while the orc fell to the ground dead. Cantle commented on how nasty the man was. He shouted to Zanzel that if it hadn't worked, the man would already be dead. Zanzel smiled and agreed, then said that it had worked anyway. After some time, Torai and Shindo were resurrected. Many people gathered around the orc's body. They were all surprised that the mercenaries were able to kill this creature. Etsuya thoughtfully noted how the orcs looked up close. One of the villagers noted with alarm that orcs usually didn't go south, so he didn't know what the monster was doing here. Hearing this, the boys were shocked. Hakazaki asked if it was possible that he came to check everything before the festival. Etsuya also added that it was possible that the monster heard the mercenaries' training. The most terrifying possibilities began to appear in their minds. Suddenly, a resident suggested that the orcs might already know absolutely everything about the mercenaries. There was talk among the people that there might be a traitor among them. This man sternly told them not to discuss it so easily because the traitor was definitely out there somewhere. People became frightened, after which they began to quarrel again, blaming each other and making hasty conclusions and guesses. Ai and Ayana shouted for the others not to quarrel, because they all needed to be together in such a difficult time. The villagers shouted that it was the girls who called these people. They said that they had never agreed to anything, and then blamed Ayana and Ai. Hakazaki indignantly said that those girls were the only ones who were doing anything for the island. Shindo agreed and exclaimed that if orcs showed up, they would simply eat everyone there. She asked what those men were doing, after which she herself answered that they had decided to dump everything on two girls. Torai asked Etsuya if they should cut up the villagers first. He didn't understand what the point was in leaving them alive. Etsuya said there was no point since the mission only said to protect Wakadam and didn't mention the others. Tori was delighted, saying that in this case they had one less problem. The residents came to their senses and began to ask what these people were talking about. They said that they were their employers whom they had paid. They said the boys had to protect them. Cantle said thoughtfully that he didn't like that. The man hoped that it wouldn't cause them to lose another fight. Shindo was wary of hearing about another fight, but quickly assumed that they were talking about that incident. Zanzel called out loudly to the people and told them to stop talking nonsense. At the same time, the man threateningly thrust his weapon into the ground. Because of this, the villagers immediately tensed up and fell silent, turning their attention to Zanzel. Seeing the man, Ayana was a little surprised as she recognized him. She exclaimed loudly, asking if it was Zanza. She told him that they were the same age. The villagers also recognized Zanza and began to say that she was right and that this was the boy. They were surprised that he had survived. The man noted that now they finally remembered, after which he said that nothing had changed. The man said sternly that it was good that their ancestors could not see this. He asked what they would say. He said something about 900 years ago, after which the villagers fell silent with awkwardness. They remembered the words of Ayana and Ai, who said that their ancestors, being weak slaves, escaped from the mainland and went to sea in search of a land without wars and conflicts. The island, full of disasters, could hardly be called paradise, but they decided to stay there and farm the land. Paradise, they said, is not something you find but something you make. Zanzel told the people to look at themselves, because their wealth had made them forget how their ancestors fled the mainland. Their people used to be servants, and now they use money to decide who lives and who dies. He said that they were not trying to preserve peace with money, but their rich status. He said that they had not even earned it, they had only inherited it. He exclaimed that 15 years ago he left this island because he was tired of being like them. However, he was ready to fight because, unlike these people, he loved this land. Ai agreed and said that their ancestors were not such losers, and they built a real paradise on Earth. Shauna added that time passed, and they forgot what was hidden behind it. The most important thing about this island was its idea, a paradise without wars and conflicts. It is more than just land, more than just people. It is land and people, culture and knowledge and their own pride. She said that without these 5 things, it's all just a sham. Shindo smiled, talking about pride. She said that's definitely not what they feel. Torai smiled and agreed, saying that it certainly wasn't while these people were there. Etsuya said that if they valued their lives above these qualities, then it was time for them to flee the island. Zanzel agreed and said that it was time to choose. He asked the inhabitants if they would defend this place. Negotiations began among the people. Everyone was in confusion. Suddenly, one of them gathered courage and confidently said that he would do it too and fight. Many others followed him, not wanting to give up their only homeland. The two who had been indignant earlier looked at each other, after which they hesitantly said that they would also participate. Cantle noted that the situation seemed to have changed. Lale said that as a mercenary, the guy did not stand out, but it seemed that he was more useful than he had expected. The boys watched as the people became more enthusiastic. However, at this time Shindo could not get rid of the thought of whether there was a traitor among them or not. At this time, sad sighs were heard in the large house. The huge orc asked if his son had fallen into the volcano and died. The man standing in front of him confirmed this. He thought that if he told her the truth, a terrible rampage would begin, and he didn't even know who would win. The orc told him to remember that she had promised earlier that she would spare the man's family even if she destroyed the island. She cried out for him to tell her the truth. The man thought that he needed to buy more time and later he would simply join the winner. He exclaimed that it was true, and the orc stumbled and fell into the volcano, and he personally saw it. The next day, Etsuya was still working hard to level up. Suddenly, he heard a sound, and then a master with a wheel appeared in front of him. He informed the boy that Etsuya had reached level 10. Hearing this, the boy cried out joyfully. The master said that since Etsuya had learned the wizard, this section was divided into the arch-wizard and the mage. The boy was surprised because a high-level profession had opened up for him. With shining eyes, he thought that he definitely wanted one. He told the master that he wanted to start. The master spun the wheel and then it stopped at the blacksmith. Etsuya cursed, noticing that it was again a profession with a 0.5% chance of dropping. This was the third time. The guy asked the master how this was possible. He exclaimed that he did it on purpose, after which he asked why the wheel was needed at all. The master did not answer and said goodbye. Etsuya shouted after him for the master not to leave the conversation. He cursed, then decided to look at his stats. Opening them, he was amazed to see that he could create weapons and armor. The equipment created by the blacksmith player depends on many conditions, but can be used by all players. For each blacksmith, everything starts late. The boy was working hard to become better. He thought that he needed something to fight the orcs. There were only 9 days left until the festival. The man Etsuya was working with asked the boy if they would continue working. The boy was silent for a moment, then agreed and said that they would start all over again. He put the sword he had made back into the furnace to be melted down again. The boy listened carefully to the instructions of the man who had taught him. A few hours ago, the guy told Jan and Ai that he became a blacksmith, which surprised him greatly. The guy said skeptically that these were heroic things. He asked the girls if they had blacksmiths at all. Ai said that they did, and then added that her grandfather was one. She asked if Etsuya wanted to meet him. The guy agreed and asked her to arrange a meeting for them. The guy stood at the machine and thought that everything was bad because he only had 10 days left. The man said that Etsuya was starting from scratch and he didn't like the boy's chances. Etsuya thought that blacksmithing gave the hero knowledge of metal and leather, the ability to create weapons, but it did not give the experience of a blacksmith. Just like the farming and cooking skills, it's more like memorizing an entire reference book on the subject. Etsuya asked the blacksmith if there was another way. The man said that maybe casting would be easier. Forging can be done in 2 ways. What he did before is called stamping, which is when heated metal is driven into a mold. Casting is when he melts the metal and pours it into the desired mold. So once he has created the mold, all he has to do is pour the metal into it. The man pulled out an object and said that they were making molds for castings in this. He needed to mix clay with water, then knead it in the mold and make a cast. Etsuya said he understood. He thought they were dealing with orcs. And the skin was thick, so you had to be strong enough to break through it, and the weapons worked just like they did in real life. He couldn't put it in virtual storage, and if it broke, it would be useless. He needed to lighten the weapon and make it as strong and powerful as possible. At first, Etsuya thought of a 2-handed weapon, but many would not be able to handle it. Next on the list was a katana, but its blade was too thin and could break quickly. Afterwards, he thought about making a naginata, but the shaft would break. He sat and thought about what would happen if he combined their best qualities. The smaller the point of impact, the deeper it would penetrate. He thought about piercing weapons that they might work better. Suddenly, at that moment, he had an epiphany. He remembered that when fighting orcs, you need to quickly return after an attack, and if the weapon gets stuck, it will be difficult to escape. But if the blade is already broken, there is no point in pulling it out. Etsuya came to the conclusion that he could make an axe with a removable stake. He clearly decided that he had to try this concept. Time passed and there were only 8 days left until the harvest festival. Shindo asked the boy in surprise what he was holding in his hands and if it could be his new weapon. Etsuya said that it was not, and for now it was just a model. He would cover it with clay and prepare it to make a mold. That way he could make it as a solid piece of iron. Shindo asked in surprise if this weapon would look the same. The guy said that it would, and it would be the first. Hearing this, the girl did not understand the guy. Etsuya said that the next project was to create a throwing weapon for Hakazaki and Takedo. This would be their main task, but he was still working on the design, so he wasn't sure if it would be ready in time. Shindo asked if the throwing weapon would be some kind of bow. In response, the guy calmly said that he was going to make a cannon. Hearing this, Shindo was speechless. There were 7 days left until the harvest festival. The blacksmith told Etsuya that everything was almost ready. After the boy was convinced, he pulled out the form from the speech. After that, he happily noted that everything worked and this was his first casting. He decided to make a second mold, after which they could mass-produce it to replace other weapons. His goal was 10 axes and 100 stakes. To do this, he had to connect two parts of the mold, simultaneously increasing the temperature in the furnace. The guy said it was ready. The last thing to do was make sure the metal was melted. When it started flowing from the machine into the molds, it was ready. He unscrewed the valve and began pouring metal into the mold. The work was in full swing. There were only 6 days left until the festival. The guy removed one of the mold parts, after which he noticed that everything worked out. Immediately after casting, the blade was still too dull. Etsuya sat at the machine and worked with it. He needed to sharpen the blade with a whetstone. After a while, he got the result he needed. After that, he had to add the skin of a recently killed orc to a removable stake for holding. After that, he inserted the stake into the correct hole. He picked up the weapon and happily said that here it was, his orc crusher. He called it a mega smasher. After that, the guy went to simulate a battle with an orc. Etsuya quickly rushed towards the tree, thrusting his weapon into it. After that, he ran back just as quickly as is necessary in a battle with orcs. As a result, the peg from the weapon remained in the tree. Looking at this, Cantle nodded approvingly. The others were delighted. Etsuya smiled, thinking that now they need to make many pegs and his gun. There were only 3 days left until the festival. At this time, Etsuya was busily creating stakes. While he was working, Torai and Katz came to see him. The guy asked how the work was going, and Katz said that she knew that they had not spoken for a long time. Etsuya greeted them but noticed that they seemed to be drinking. He wanted them to leave. Torai happily said that Katz was next to him and he was the new mercenary. He said he was bringing the boy up to speed. Fighting, traveling, he said Katz was his apprentice. Etsuya got angry and asked if Torai was a newbie himself. Katz was amazed and asked why Torai had bragged to him so much. Torai blushed and asked Etsui why he had told him. The boy asked Etsui which one he had been aiming for. Etsuya didn't quite understand what the guy was talking about. Torai said that of the 3, you would be his. Etsuya just remained silent. Torai asked what was wrong. He assumed that the guy liked you too. He said that the guy was unlucky, because while he was sitting there alone, he had already managed to make a deal. Hearing this, Etsuya finally became interested. Katz chuckled and said that Torai was lying because she had simply pushed him away. Etsuya went back to work, still uninterested. Torai yelled at Katz to shut up, because now it was no wonder he was still alone. He said she wouldn't fall in love with him but the first 10 or 20 tries, but she's a woman. Every time he tries to get close to her, she lets him get a little closer. But if he thinks he'll succeed on the 100th try, it's still the first. Katz exclaimed that this was very wise. Yetsuya thought that he had neither the willpower nor the passion nor the courage for this. Moreover, he had other priorities. There was only half a day left before the festival. In the blacksmith shop, Hakazaki asked if this was the same cannon. The guy confirmed it. Etsuya said he would finish it in a few hours. At least he hoped so. Hakazaki doubted it. She turned to the guy and thanked him for all these things for them. The guy said that they were all in the same situation and they needed the best weapon he could make. Hakazaki stated that he always says that, but she doesn't understand why he's willing to sacrifice so much just so they have a little more of a chance. The guy said he wasn't quite ready to make sacrifices because he had a list of priorities, and if something wasn't there, frankly, it didn't bother him. Normal life was such an example. Hakazaki asked if saving everyone was the first priority. The boy said it wasn't. Technically, it meant saving them all, but saving the girl and Shindo was the most important thing to him. Hakazaki was surprised by these words. The guy said it was because they were more worthy. He was basing it on who would bring more benefit to their planet. He meant that there were people who could replace Torai or Takedo if something went wrong. Hearing this, Hakazaki asked if the boy had gone crazy. Suddenly, another person said that this was called eugenics and it was dangerous. The boys greeted Cantle. Etsuya said that he wasn't thinking about genetics or anything like that. He was thinking about their past, present, and future. Cantle said that all these factors depend on the environment in which they were raised. Nobility is learned from the best. Etsuya said that if 2 people make the same mistake, the stronger one gets demoted. If they have a bad boss, then everyone suffers. Cantle laughed and said he couldn't argue with that. Hakazaki started scolding the guy. Cantle said that he used to be an officer too. He lost all 7 of his battles, and it cost him the entire country. Hakazaki exclaimed that Rice said that any commander would have lost those battles. She said that in fact, if it hadn't been for Cantle, they would have lost even faster. The man asked if that was why they fought pointless battles that exhausted them, only prolonging the war. He said that if they were doomed to defeat from the start, they should have simply surrendered. He said that as a commander, he was a fool. Hakazaki exclaimed that they had prepared hard this time, and she believed that they would win this battle. Etsuya thought that it felt like Cantle had not prepared for battles that he had lost. Cantle said that in time they themselves would find out about it. He asked what they had achieved. The man began to tell that the orcs would first go to the festival to collect the donations. They had already built a fort with trenches and a bank to the north of the village. They had also emptied all the houses that could serve as shelter for them, more than 100 islanders equipped with bows. The mercenaries have taken up the defense of the northeast and northwest, where they have linked the houses to launch an attack from above. They will bombard the orcs with arrows as they move towards the target. They also hid weapons all over the island to replace the broken ones. And finally, they would send children and their mothers so that the islanders could fight without hesitation. Cantle said that they would divert the wind from their ships and also reduce their numbers and then go into close combat. He exclaimed that if they controlled everything, they had a chance. Or maybe they just thought they had a chance. It was only half a day before the harvest festival. Suddenly, someone shouted about the port and said that those who were seeing off the ship were attacked. Hearing this, Cantle was shocked. People said that these monsters came from the sea. The man exclaimed in horror that they swam in such a way as to avoid both the fort and the heights. The trader had previously said that half of them were the guys they called heroes. They knew a little about them, but the guys needed to be avoided because they could come back to life. The orc thanked the man for the information and said that they would see each other on the way back. The man was not sure about that. The monsters dealt with people with particular cruelty. That's how it became known that the plan was known to the orcs. Zanza was nearby and tried to fight with all his might. The boy tried to attack, but the monster inflicted a terrible wound on him, making Zanza the first to die in the battle. When Cantle arrived with Shindo and Torai, more than 20 people who had been training in archery for the past few days and were heading towards the fortifications were caught unarmed and killed. Cantle shouted to the others to gather as there were 3 orcs in front of them. Shindo and Torai accepted the order and rushed to attack. Torai tried to stab the monster's stomach, but it didn't work. The guy started to get nervous because it didn't work. Shindo jumped high into the air and tried to attack the orc, but he strengthened his spine. Shindo was very surprised by this, when suddenly the orc quickly turned around and hit the girl. Shindo tumbled backwards. She was defeated. The girl realized that she couldn't handle 3 at once, and that was too bad. She also broke her long sword. Immediately after that, the orcs rushed to attack and further hitting Torai. The monsters worked as a team. One of the orcs grabbed his comrade by the shoulder, then pushed off him and dealt an even stronger blow to the humans. Cantle looked at all this horror and thought that it was simply impossible to defeat 3 at once, and they needed to retreat. The man shouted at Hakazaki and Etsui to stay away, as they could only slow him down. However, at that moment he thought that this was not true, as the boys could resurrect. For Cantle, it was quite a problem that he needed to plan ahead. He began to back away from the monsters, because he couldn't attack them until they opened up. It was at that moment that he needed the archers more than ever. Suddenly, Hakazaki ran up to him with a shield and said that she could distract one. Cantle agreed and thanked the girl for her help. One of the orcs ran towards Hakazaki, after which the remaining 2 went towards Cantle. Suddenly for everyone, the orc who went towards Hakazaki turned towards Cantle. He grabbed another orc and was about to lunge, intending to kill the man. Cantle realized that he had no time to dodge. He merely swung his sword while the orc did the same. The man was almost on the verge of death when suddenly the monster that attacked Cantle received a wound to the head. Everyone was incredibly shocked by what was happening and did not understand what had just happened. Suddenly one guy grinned and gasped, noticing that he had passed right through. He said it wasn't quite what he had hoped for, but he was quite happy with the result. Cantle noticed that the boy had finished his weapon. Etsuya held onto a huge weapon that looked like a crossbow with a satisfied expression on his face. It looked like a bow and arrow, but it was not of this world. As soon as the monster fell to the ground dead, the 2 surviving orcs looked in horror at what had just happened. At this point, Etsuya began to panic a little because he couldn't shoot again right away. He quickly came to his senses, thinking that he needed to load the next shell. This weapon is a crossbow that shoots iron bullets. The thick bowstring ensures that the bullet flies straight, but it is very difficult to pull it by hand. Noticing that the guy was hesitating, the orcs decided not to lose the opportunity to escape and quickly began to leave from there, which Etsuya noticed. He began to pull the bowstring more aggressively, but it was not an easy task. He realized that the monsters now knew that he needed time to reload. He screamed at General Cantle to do something. As soon as the man came to his senses, he noticed Reese, who was shouting loudly that the orcs were here. As the monsters ran after Cantle, the boy exclaimed that he would hold them back, but right there he tripped and fell to the ground. Everyone was shocked to see this. Seeing the guy, the orcs changed their route and were about to attack Rice when he suddenly grinned slyly. When the orcs were close enough for Cantle to escape, but not close enough to attack Reese, the boy jumped up from the ground and ran to the side. The boy made a sign to Etsu that he noticed. Realizing that he had an opportunity, he mentally thanked Rice and noted that he was now ready to attack. When the orcs were within the boy's reach, he took good aim and shot at one of the orcs, hitting him in the shoulder. The monster screamed loudly in pain, after which two orcs jumped off the flat ground and ran away. Noticing this, Etsuya finally put down his crossbow. Cantle thanked Rice for saving him, to which the boy replied with a smile that it was an honor for him to save the commander. On top of that, he couldn't attack, and if he had tried, he would have been dead already. Cantle reminded him that he had previously asked the boy not to call him that, because now he was as ordinary as Rice. The boy agreed, calling the man Generalissimo. Etsuya laughed, thinking that Rice really knew how to cheer up. As they ate dinner, Rice made sure no one was bored. Etsuya smiled, thinking that he had been like that to everyone in the beginning. It was already the 4th hour of the battle. Etsuya told Hakazaki and Taketada how to use the new weapon and entrusted it to them. Taketada exclaimed that she would bestow upon him the name Orc Eater. Etsuya and Rice, with their speed, lured the orcs closer to the form, right under the fire of the Orc Eater. The guys held a remarkable defense. While the girls were watching the situation, they noticed that Paketsuya was leading another orc behind him. They began counting down before firing, when suddenly the crossbow began to creak. The arrow wouldn't come out, which is why they noticed that the bowstring was in the socket. Takedo took a deep breath and said tiredly that it was very hard. In a quick tempo, the girls loaded the bolt again to attack. Hakazaki instructed Takedo to aim, to which the girl quickly agreed. She aimed her sights at the orc running after Etsuya and said that everything was ready. She stated that fire was on standby. Immediately after, Hakazaki fired at the orc and hit its stomach. The monster fell to the ground with a loud crack, after which Takedo noted that the target had been hit. After that, they gave the command for the archers to shoot. The guys started shooting at the orc, finishing him off. Takedo happily said that they seemed to be doing quite well. Zanzamer from the sea joined Torai in the fight at the eastern foot. A little higher up, Lale and Cats are firing, running from roof to roof. At the back of the foothills, Shindo and Cantle and the 3 best archers from the village. Veikudam hid in a cave along with the village elders. They hoped to act as bait, but a sudden attack by the orcs disrupted their plans. In addition, they had a collection of wounded that they were looking after. It was only 200 square feet inside, but the cave doors would probably be able to withstand an orc attack. Shortly before noon, the boys killed another orc. Reese noticed that they no longer approached the fort. Etsuya said that they probably learned to go around what crippled them. They began to avoid the fort. Etsuya said that knowing that they had such an impenetrable fort made it easier for them to defend the rest of the area. Rice agreed with these words. Etsuya raised his hand and said he would go and run around the area and see if he could lure anyone else. Rice looked surprised, then smiled and wished the boy luck. He was surprised that the heroes had so much strength, because he was already falling off his feet from fatigue. Etsuya waved his weapon and thought that this could be his first one-on-one meeting with an orc. He was getting too arrogant. They were defeating the orcs at this stage incredibly quickly and easily. He spotted one of the monsters and smirked because now he knew how they moved. This was true even though his cannon was responsible for 100% of the fort's damage. He charged at the orc, thinking that he would definitely be able to deal with the monster. When the monster tried to attack the boy, Etsuya noticed that he had opened up and decided that this was the perfect moment. He was going to hit the monster in the head and defeat it for good. When he got close enough to the monster, his weapon hit the orc's head without leaving a single scratch. The boy flew back and was amazed that he had barely grazed him. When Etsuya was directly above the orc, the monster spread its arms and then slapped the guy like a fly. Yusuke Etsuya now respawns within 30 seconds. The boy was unhappy that his attempt had not worked. 14 orc males were born on the island after the queen arrived. For most of them, it was their first contact with humans. Since orcs have the mentality of a human infant, they can learn in combat. One of the orcs began collecting earthen rocks. Thus they learned about throwing weapons and began to use them. With all his might, this orc swung and threw a large lump of earthen rocks at the fort. Noticing this, Hakazaki panicked. With a destructive force, this clot hit the fort, destroying everything in its path. People began to panic and shout that they needed to hide as quickly as possible. No one doubted that the orcs could throw a half-ton chunk of earth a long distance. But once the orcs realized this, the tide of battle changed dramatically. Hakazaki and Tatte began to roll their crossbow in panic to shoot the orc. For a while, they aimed at the monster, who threw a piece of earth. When all was completed, they heard the others warn that something was flying from the right. As soon as one orc realized the power of the throwing weapon, the others also began to imitate him. This meaning soon spread. Hakozaki looked at the battlefield in horror. Takedo said that she was shooting, which brought Hakozaki to consciousness. They shot at the monster, but their arrow bounced off its body and head, causing them to only draw blood. The orc screamed loudly in pain, then looked in the direction from which the blow came. Hakozaki and Tatte realized with horror that they had missed, or at least they had thought so. With even greater anger and speed, the orc began to gather the pieces of earth into a huge ball. This, in turn, led to unexpected results. The long-range attacks had completely destroyed the coastal trenches. The humans could only watch in utter horror as the orcs advanced upon them. The defenseless humans could only watch as the monsters got closer and closer to them. Suddenly, Rice came up behind the orcs. He swung his weapon at the monster's neck, but his weapon cracked. The boy only had time to realize the hopelessness of what was happening. Hakozaki and Tatte screamed loudly, unable to help the boy. Immediately after that, one of the orcs threw Rice into the air while the wounded orc screamed in pain. The next moment, Etsuya came up to them. He swung, trying to attack the orc's head. He was sure that this time he had to hit it right in the middle. His weapon hit exactly where he had planned with a loud crack, but it was not enough. Etsuya panicked and noticed that he had failed. He should have finished the orc off in one blow. The second monster tried to attack the guy, but Etsuya quickly retreated. He jumped onto one of the walls that covered the fort, but the orc followed him. Noticing this, Takedo remembered about the weapon and shouted about it to Hakozaki. The girls immediately came to their senses and began to pull the bowstring for an attack. At this time, Etsuya ran in a circle, buying time for an attack from the cannon. As soon as the orc tried to climb onto the roof of the house, he fell inside and ended up near the rubble. By this time, the girls had already managed to load their weapons and warned the guy about it, who quickly left there. Hakozaki took aim and then said that it was time to attack. Accepting the command, Takedo fired her crossbow, hitting the orc right in the heart. The monster died. Suddenly, Rice, lying on the ground in blood, called out to the boys. With his last strength, he smiled and asked if they had killed them. Rice, a former infantryman, had a story that he told all his comrades. He tried to say something, but he coughed up his own blood. The guys looked in horror at the guy who couldn't be saved. They remembered how Rice had told them around the campfire that they would always remember the battle they had lost. He had told them that he and his best friend had not been good enough for Cantle's squad. Instead, they served under a spoiled aristocrat. They were in reserve on standby, but they never got to do anything because their country fell apart. So instead of fighting, they spent weeks running from those who wanted to kill them. The serfs caught Robin and Landa on the first day, after which the bandits captured Cluis, Bottom, Katame, and Bitsburg. They also wounded Kerwa, who lasted only until the third day. Then he told them about the events of the fourth day. Rice told them about the 25 days he spent on the run. He named and caused the death of everyone in his squad, telling a few jokes in passing. He said that on the 11th day, Makahi, his best friend, was killed in a dispute over food. They ran out of food on the 13th day. On the 19th day, Canelon lost his leg to necrosis from malnutrition. And after that, there was only Rice left. He talked about it with a smile on his face. And no matter how much he joked and fooled around, it must have been hell. Everyone loved Rice. It was easy to tell what kind of person he was at first sight, but Etsuya could not imagine the depth of his despair and what he felt then. The boy said that when he found Asalam and Marambia at the end, he was incredibly happy. He said he was completely useless in a fight, but if they needed to escape, they would turn to a professional. The guy smiled and said he hated it when everyone was so serious and depressed. He said he was terribly weak. As he bled, he said that he had stood up for his country at least once, and now after all those years he had been alive, he died like this. He called himself weak. Until the very end, Rice tried to be positive and not upset them. For 3 years in high school, Etsuya never opened up to anyone simply because he transferred. He was always antisocial. They had completely different lives, personalities, goals, but still he envied Rice's strength. The boy died with a smile on his face, while all his comrades cried in grief. Etsuya said that Rice would eventually be able to tell his friend and his war comrades how he finally made it in General Cantle's unit. Rice laid his head down and closed his eyes. He smiled and said that Etsuya might not repeat it. The boys stood silently by the body of their dead friend. At this time, word came from another point that the fort had been overrun and Rice and 9 others were dead. The commander heard this and told Keith to go there and help the others. Keita smiled and said that he understood. He turned and told Katz that he would be back very soon. Notification of Rice's death also reached Cantle. The man said that the boy had served him well and he would meet Rice again in the underworld. The guys on the fort were running around in panic looking for arrows. They saw that there was nothing left there and most of them were to the west. They tried to find more free arrows, but there was nothing. Takedo approached Kyusu and asked how many bolts they had left. Hakazaki hesitated, then said that there was only one bolt left. There was only 1 day and 12 hours left until the end of the time allotted for this task. One of the orcs was right behind Torai, while Itsuya fought him from the side. Hakazaki and Tatte loaded their last bolt into the crossbow and fired it straight into the monster's chest. The orc grabbed his chest when suddenly at that very moment Itsuya rose as high as he could and hit the orc right in the head. He caught his breath heavily, after which they were ordered to leave the fort and all survivors to disperse and find shelter. The orc eater bolts were down to 0, and Yuka Taketate changed her class to hunter. The girl happily exclaimed that this was a completely different matter, and they had changed class, so now the bow was available. Hakazaki sadly said that she had not yet reached the class change, although there was only a little left. Itsuya said that there were only 5 orcs left and he would go to tell the others. The boys thanked him. Itsuya thought that they had killed many orcs, but not all of them. Something didn't add up. He didn't understand where the others were. He supposed they could have ambushed him or attacked from another direction. He began to think about who they could least afford to lose right now. He remembered the conditions of the mission and immediately realized that protecting Wakadam was important to them. He asked the others what was happening with Wakadam Cave. They told him that there were no reports of it being attacked yet. One guy came up and reported to Etsu that the forge was currently making bolts for the orc eater. Etsu was very surprised when he found out that the blacksmith was still there. Torai suggested that the boy go and get the bolts. Etsuya agreed and said that this was the first priority now. The 4 of them could grab the bolts and then they would head to Wakadam Cave. 10 minutes later, the messenger reaches the western elevation. Cantle, alarmed, noticed that the enemy numbers did not add up. Shindo agreed and said that no one had seen the orc queen yet. Cantle confirmed this and said that he did not like it at all. The man asked Shindo what she thought the queen's plan might be. The girl thought about how the orcs had crossed the sea at the very beginning, after which she became frightened and exclaimed about the children who were on the ship. Cantle became tense and said that they should check him. Meanwhile, on the eastern hills, people saw orcs. 2 monsters were heading towards them. One of the messengers came to Lolly and said that the fort was abandoned and 4 heroes were heading there. Lolly noted this and told Katz and Zanza to buy some time. By this time, Cantle and Shindo had arrived at the coastal village. There they met the orc queen. She turned around and asked if they were spying on her as she prepared to swim. She exclaimed that it was very rude. Cantle immediately realized that her target was the ship. The queen said that it was true because they had killed her children and she would repay them in kind. Shindo sternly said that she would not allow that to happen. The queen exclaimed indignantly that the people themselves had forced this treaty upon her and the people themselves had broken it. She declared that they would get what they deserved. Shindo was astonished by these words. At this time, Etsuya was skeptically asking what kind of good guys they were. Torai asked if that wasn't true, since they were heroes who defeated evil and all that. Etsuya exclaimed that it wasn't like that. He reminded Torai of the story of how the islanders were being eaten, and in order to survive, they offered the queen a treaty. And the orcs agreed, although they didn't have to. But new orcs were born, and the islanders realized that in a few years they would have no buffalo left. And before becoming new food for the orcs, the islanders decided to kill all the orcs, thereby breaking the treaty. Etsuya said that from an objective point of view, it was the islanders who were bad. Torai said that was true, but they were people and they were monsters. Etsuya was amazed by his comrade's opinion. He said he would play devil's advocate, then said the orcs were ruining the local economy like an invasive species. Etsuya told Torai to speak normally. Cantle suddenly said that in this situation there was no right or wrong. It was either them or them. They were fighting for their own lives. This applied to both sides. He told them not to think badly of them, and he wouldn't think badly of them if they won. Shindo thought that this whole situation looked like overpopulation and food shortages in miniature. The queen spoke furiously about how the people had acted so primitively, like barbarians, although she thought they should be smart. They were on an island that didn't have much arable land. The queen exclaimed that she did not like it, and so be it. The girl realized that humans and orcs simply could not coexist in this place, so they fought for territory. The queen was ready to attack. Noticing this, Cantle also began to prepare for battle. The queen rushed to attack them. The earth has been the cause of wars since ancient times. However, Shindo didn't understand if this was right. She was sure that there had to be a more peaceful way to resolve this conflict. While Shindo was running away from the attack, the queen destroyed the house that was behind the girl. Cantle rushed to attack and was about to attack the queen from behind. Noticing this, she became very tense. With a loud crack, Cantle's weapon was destroyed. He landed on the ground. The queen exclaimed that it hurt and then began destroying buildings, trying to get Cantle. Shindo thought that even the long sword couldn't pierce her. She tried the weapon created by Etsuya and attacked the queen's back, but even this axe couldn't help. She thought that this time she should definitely put all her strength into the blow. She climbed up the building, but the queen knocked her down, sending her flying. Shindo noticed that Cantle was near one of their weapons caches. The queen also noticed this and quickly rushed towards the man. Using a huge weapon, Cantle skillfully attacked the queen. More and more wounds appeared on her, but she did not react. Suddenly she bared her teeth and said that Cantle had angered her. She attacked him, grabbing the man's weapon. She took it back, then threw his own weapon at Cantle. The man dodged it with some difficulty, then grabbed the weapon and twirled it around in his hands again. He was standing right in front of the queen. Shindo chose the right moment to use the wind to blind the queen. She covered her eyes with her hands because sand had gotten into them. Without wasting time, he attacked her hands, and together they retreated for a while. Cantle turned to Yu and said he had a plan. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the destruction of the fortifications on the eastern highlands was confirmed. Katz was bleeding and cursing because the man had taken the brunt of the blow. The guy was talking about what would have happened if only he had been stronger. Lale was already dead by this point. Etsuya asked where Zanza had gone. Katz said that 2 orcs had come. The 3 of them were able to kill one, but Zanza had disappeared while fighting the other orc. Torai said that Zanza always fights to the end. Etsuya asked Katz where he thought Zanza might have gone. The boy didn't know the answer to that. Etsuya wondered if they should split up to look for the boy. He thought they could hand Katz over to the islanders. They needed to get the bolts. Only he and Torai were able to move freely, since losing the others would greatly damage their defense. Etsuya told the others to stick together and remember what they had talked about. They carried Katz to the Vakadam cave, which serves as a hospital. Along the way, they stopped at a forge to pick up bolts for the orc eater. At the forge, the man said that they should wait a bit since the furnace was not yet fully heated. Etsuya agreed. Hakazaki and Tatte were left to wait for the bolts. The remaining 7, including Etsuya, Torai, and Katz, went to the cave. At 14:30, Katz was left in the cave. Yana confidently said that they would cure the boy and they should not worry about him. Ai was surprised when she learned that the number of orcs did not add up. She said that they were living in Kumamo Castle, and some of them might have stayed there. In case there was no one there, they could take over the castle. The boys quickly accepted this plan. At 14:45, Etsuya, Torai, and the 4 islanders reached the stone bridge to Kumamo Castle. Etsuya noticed that he was still there. Torai noticed that if it was a sentry, he might not be alone. A stern orc met the guys on the bridge. With weapons at the ready, they rushed to attack. The orc was also not far behind. At this time, the battle reached its climax. Meanwhile, in the southeast, Zanzimir fought against the orc. He attacked with his 2-handed sword, but the orc intercepted it and threw the guy into the wall. Zanzimir was in a serious condition. The boys only thought that he was fighting an orc. Meanwhile, Cantle and Shindo were fighting against the queen. When the queen lost sight of the children, she was looking around the area, which was lined with houses. Suddenly, she heard some kind of crackling and immediately went towards the spring. The queen came to an empty area and noticed that they were not there. She realized that Shindo had simply thrown her sword away with air magic. The queen turned around, seeing the boys on the roof. Suddenly, the whole earth shook. They realized that they were very wrong. Shindo realized what was happening and exclaimed that it should not happen now. They were just starting to get somewhere. All the battles that were happening on the island had stopped. Hakazaki assumed it was an earthquake. In reality, the real hell was just beginning for them. Torai fell to the ground with Etsuya and screamed that a volcano was erupting. The boy looked up, full of despair, and saw explosions coming from the huge volcano. All they could do was watch helplessly. No one could have expected such an outcome. The entire earth was cracking as the boys watched in horror as most of the buildings began to collapse, turning into splinters. Hakazaki, Tatte, and the blacksmith who remained together looked at the destroyed forge in shock. They sat on the ground as the explosions grew louder. Even Zanzimir, who had previously lost his chances of winning, was able to recover, as his opponent was distracted by the explosion. Realizing that he had a chance, Zanzimir quickly grabbed his weapon and cut the orc down. The boy took his weapon back and noticed that the tremors were dying down. He was very lucky that the orc was scared by the eruption. He thought about how such a strong earthquake only happens once every 100 years. At that time, the cave that served as shelter for Yana and Ai was being destroyed from the inside. Yana was carrying Katz in her arms and shouting at her sister to be careful because the ceiling was starting to collapse. She said that they had to get out of the cave as soon as possible. Ai began to hesitate because they had many wounded in the cave. Yana was already at the very exit. She shouted to her sister to hurry, but Ai did not have time to do anything. Right after Yana came out of the cave, the passage to it was blocked, which is why Ai was left inside. Ayana wanted to go to her sister, but the guy stopped her and told her not to come closer. He wanted to warn the girl about the danger, but the next moment his head was smashed. A hail of fireballs rained down from the sky. Ayana turned around in panic, noticing that everything around her was under attack. The old men exclaimed that these were volcanic bombs and that they needed to find shelter as soon as possible. Volcanic bombs are solid chunks of lava, over 64 millimeters in diameter, ejected during an eruption and can sometimes reach the speed of a bullet. 58 people died in the eruption of Mount Antake in 2014. Etsuya lay down on the ground and hid behind a small rise. He pulled on Torai's leg. The boy shouted that the orc had retreated inside the castle and they had to get to the entrance. He told everyone to stay close to the wall and not to raise their heads under any circumstances. Shindo noticed with horror that there was an eruption. They were quite far from the volcano, but they were near the sea and the earthquake was about 6 or 7 points. While Shindo was distracted by this, the queen threw a piece of earth at the girl with all her might. Cantle shouted at Yu, but she did not have time to dodge, and the queen seriously injured the girl. She lifted Shindo by the head and threw her towards the sea. The girl ended up in the water. She thought that everything was very bad because she had let down her guard. When she separated from the body, she saw with even greater horror that the water level was dropping at an incredible rate. Cantle did not understand what had happened, and the queen assumed that the shaking in the ground had made a hole in the sea. She said it was nothing and decided to continue the fight with Cantle. At this time, Shindo was in a great panic. She did not know how to tell Cantle that he needed to leave the shore quickly. There was supposed to be a tsunami now. There were all the typical signs of such a disaster. The team, which included Ayana, noticed that a white wall was approaching. The girl did not quite understand what they were talking about, but she quickly noticed that something was approaching them from the sea at incredible speed. Noticing this, Ayana began to hum a song. The others did not understand what was going on and asked the girl what she was doing. Ayana did not answer. She just sang the song while tears were flowing from her eyes. One of the old men who was there realized what was happening. When asked, he said that this song was about a catastrophe that happened 800 years ago. All they could do was watch as a huge and destructive force rose up over the island in the form of waves. Yushindo, Cantle, and the Orc Queen were all missing. In fear, people ran, trying to find higher ground to escape death. They screamed that a white wall was coming towards them. The girl noticed with horror that the huge wave, mixing with the ash, was turning black. Everything repeated the lyrics of the song that Ayana was singing. The island began to be swallowed by the waters. Those who could manage to do so were saved. Many people were simply carried away by the current. Etsuya and his team were able to enter the castle, where they accidentally found Ai. The girl emerged from one passage all in the hall and sighed loudly, saying that she already thought that she would die. Everyone was shocked by her appearance. Ai greeted the heroes happily. She dusted herself off and said that she remembered a secret passage in the depths of the cave and they were able to get there by minecart. Following her, patients and wounded from the cave began to emerge from the passage. The girl noted that they were in Kumamo Castle. She asked where all the orcs were. Etsuya said that there were a couple upstairs. Suddenly, Ai noticed that everyone was desperate. The girl asked what was wrong. In response, they simply told her to look outside. As soon as Ai reached the edge, she was speechless. Half the village was flooded and the other half was destroyed by an earthquake and an eruption. It was all over. It didn't matter anymore whether they won or lost. Ai looked outside with despairing eyes where there was nothing but the remains of their village. Etsuya looked at them seriously. Suddenly they heard a loud crack and turned around. Ai saw Etsuya hitting the wall with all his might with his weapon. The girl asked him what he was doing. Etsuya explained that the wall did not even tremble. Earthquake lava, this castle did not care about anything. The boy told Ai that they, the Waikidam, were among other things the historians of the island. The girl confirmed this. Etsuya sternly asked if there was a weak point in the castle, which, if destroyed, would enable them to destroy the castle along with all the orcs. Ai asked in horror how Etsuya could ask such a thing. Earlier, the boy thought about attacking the orcs with volcanic bombs, but they are on the second tier and the bombs cannot damage them. They won't be able to flood the castle with their head either, since the castle is built on the ridge of a mountain. They could also dig a ditch and change the flow of lava, but this is impossible to do during an eruption. Torai looked at Etsuya and asked if the guy was the demon lord. Etsuya said that they weren't using that castle anyway. In order to destroy the castle, they first need to know the weak point. Ai screamed, trying to stop the guy. She asked what he was saying, then said that no one would break this castle. It had been there for 400 years, and it was the symbol of their island. She didn't understand why he wanted to destroy it. She exclaimed that the castle had survived many earthquakes, an eruption, and a tsunami, and it was still standing. She was about to continue, but Etsuya stopped her and told her to forget about it. The girl was taken aback. Etsuya went to the castle and said that he would go look for a good place to fight. Everyone else just silently watched as the guy's figure moved away into the darkness. Suddenly, Torai exclaimed that this guy was like a machine that moved towards the goal no matter what. He didn't remember a single time when Etsuya was distracted. He said that the boy would remain lonely and then laughed loudly. Ai just looked at Torai silently. Suddenly, she remembered the conversation with her father. She asked him how Etsuya was doing. The blacksmith honestly admitted that there was absolutely nothing outstanding about the guy, but he worked 20 hours a day. The blacksmith said what a pity it was, because if he had trained him for 5 or at least 2 years, Etsuya would have become a first-class blacksmith. Ai called out to Etsuya and asked him why he continued to work for this goal. She honestly didn't understand how he could do it. After a short pause, the guy said that you just need to know what he's capable of. If the goal is clear, then one just needs to keep moving towards it, and it doesn't matter at all what he does for this, as long as he moves towards the goal. Once she realized how powerless she was against that goal, she would realize that she had no time to stay put. Torai smiled and said that there was no logic to that. Ai silently thought that the boy didn't really understand it. The girl said that she only knew one thing: they didn't have time to stay in one place now. At this time, Yana was sitting and sadly talking about how on this island they had long been talking about the fact that it was not worth building a house in the lowlands. The girl who was with Yana tried to tell her something. Yana continued speaking. She said that the population continued to grow and they built houses closer and closer to the shore. Most of the houses swallowed up by the White Wall were built in the last 50 years. At this time, Ai also began to cry and said that their ancestors had previously told them to build houses on the ridge and that the valley should only be used for fields. And they even deepened the trenches created by the landslides to force the lava to flow out of these valleys. Yana said that she and Ai were supposed to convey this to the people, but they failed. Ai looked up at the sky and said that they would definitely make it this time. They said that if an earthquake destroyed their houses, they would build them stronger. They had the technology and materials to do so. Even without natural resources, the island's inhabitants developed an economy, producing high-quality products, and also created a peaceful state. This is how these survivors got better. They had their ups and downs, but they always moved forward. They screamed that next time they would not forget and they would never forget. They, the people of Jiffen, would not let disasters destroy them. At that time, the sea was rough. Etsuya thought that he, too, would probably have been paralyzed if he had not known what had happened to Eastern Japan and Kumamoto. He wondered if this was what the game master wanted to show them. He sighed and mentally asked if he couldn't have chosen something better. He sighed and thought that he still had room to improve and he would complete this task. At this time, lava bombs were flying around the island. Suddenly, one of them hit the barrier that protected the unknown man. The man turned to the Japhoniets and mockingly asked if they would not let disasters destroy them. He laughed and said that they probably thought that orcs were a natural disaster too. He said that the next disaster would be their last. He called the Lord and said that the sacrifice was ready. He grinned and asked Darashuido the dragon to wake up. It was a giant flying lizard covered in black scales. Immediately after this, volcanic bombs began to rain down from the volcano with increasing force. The next moment, a silhouette of a monster began to emerge from the ashes and lava clots. The dragon Darashuido woke up. Even its level was unknown. Hakazaki and Tatte were surprised to see the monster and asked what it was. Tatte said it looked just like Bahamut. The dragon flew over the ruined city. Etsuya looked out from one of the buildings and could not believe his eyes. The guy noticed that the threat level was not specified and assumed that it could be B or even higher. Even the queen did not have such a high level. He could tell this thanks to the cook's skill of gathering information on C-rank creatures and below. Etsuya had absolutely no idea what was going on in this place. Despite all the troubles, the dragon landed easily next to Caldera. Watching everything around him go silent, he noticed that he could no longer see anything. This was an area that Etsui and his team couldn't see. Hakazaki and Tatte watched it, but they couldn't do anything. The boy thought that he would just be wasting his time if he left the castle and climbed this mountain. He didn't care what happened, because he had already decided that he would stay there and deal with those 2 orcs first. Etsuya went back to kill orcs. Just 30 minutes later, on the first floor of the northern balcony, Etsuya came down from the roof. As soon as the guy landed, he reported that he was already back. Torai noted that the boy had arrived just in time. When Etsuya looked around, he noticed 2 wounded men who had curled up and were lying silently on the ground. The boy was surprised and asked what was wrong with them. Ai coldly told him to leave these people behind, then said that he could consider them to be mentally exhausted. Hearing this, Etsuya could only quietly agree. He then turned to Torai and said that they needed to think about how to get down from the balconies instead of up. Torai, surprised, asked why the plan had changed. Atsuya said that if they forced them to fight here, they might get covered in a head, or they might just push them over the edge. Torai asked if they could fight there. Atsuya said that fighting in the castle had its pros and cons. The pro was that the height of the corridor was too small for the orcs. They can fit, but they can't swing their arms or jump. They are usually in the banquet hall because it is bigger. Torai asked why they didn't fight inside. Atsuya said he wasn't done yet. He said the bad part was that if they were surrounded on both sides, there would be no escape. They were inferior to them in both defense and offense. If they attacked head-on, it wouldn't work. They had no protective gear. Torai asked if they could throw their weapons. Atsuya said the guy could try if he was a great athlete. But Atsuya thought the ceiling was too low for a powerful thrust. They could die and regenerate repeatedly, but if the orcs ate them or broke their weapons, they would be of little use. With Shindo unable to recover, he didn't want to do anything dangerous, so they had to practice jumping off balconies and other tricks. Torai agreed with this. In the fight, the guy tried to throw his weapon at the orc, but it bounced off the roof and fell to the floor. He said it didn't work. The two orcs immediately turned to look at the boy. He cursed at the ceiling, after which Atsuya scolded him and reminded him that he had said earlier that it wouldn't work. They noticed the orc coming towards them. Seeing this, they grinned and ran away from him. They led the monster to the balcony, after which they hid themselves. Unfortunately for them, they noticed that the orc didn't fall for it. They assumed that orcs were afraid of heights. The operation to fall from the balcony was a failure. Afterwards, they decided to try an ambush operation. They started calling the monsters to them again. While the orc was walking towards them at a fast pace, the people who were calling him got scared and wanted to leave, but they had to finish the mission. At this time, the guys started counting down. When it reached 1, they quickly opened the doors, breaking the orc's knees. The monsters fell to the ground screaming. Atsuya noticed that he had managed to injure the monster. The orc leaned on his hand and pulled the peg out of his knee. At this point, Torai attacked from behind, striking hard with his spear. The orc screamed in pain again. Torai grinned but quickly noticed that he couldn't pull out his weapon. He panicked and fell back, but by this time the second monster had already arrived. The orc badly injured Torai and then ate him. Noticing this, Atsuya panicked greatly, because if Torai's vital organs were eaten, he would not be revived. The orc broke the boy's weapon, then turned around to leave. At that moment, Atsuya noticed that there was a small child on the monster's back. Noticing this, the boy was shocked. He noticed that this orc child had hair. He guessed that those two were guarding him. A little later, Atsuya carried Torai, who was legless, on his back. Their AI met them. They met on the balcony of the first floor of the castle. Noticing Torai's condition, some approached him worriedly. The guy cursed loudly and said that the orc ate his legs and also broke the guy's spear. Atsuya said that this was not true and the guy's spear was simply bent. Hearing this, Torai cried out in displeasure. Atsuya calmly told the boy to let him see. Torai asked in surprise what Atsuya was going to do. The boy quickly took out the blacksmith's equipment. It was a medium hammer. He said that with this hammer he could interact with other players' weapons to repair them. Torai was amazed and asked if the guy could really repair it. He asked Atsuya to make his spear as long as it was. The guy dropped to the floor and started hitting the spear with a hammer, but unfortunately he saw that he couldn't do it because the wooden part had split in two. All he could do was return the metal to its original state. He did so and then threw the spear back at Torai. The boy caught his weapon and thanked Atsuya for what he had done. AI was amazed to see that it was very fast, especially since Atsuya didn't even use heat. In response, the guy calmly said that it was just a special feature of this particular hammer. The guy said that the status was updated. They injured one orc, but the rest remained unharmed. They were also able to see the orc's child. Atsuya also said that this orc had hair, which the others did not. Hearing this, AI was speechless from shock. The girl exclaimed that if he had hair, then he was definitely a female orc. She said that all orcs were male except for the queen. Atsuya didn't understand why the girl was panicking so much. AI turned pale and said that she was definitely the next queen. Hearing this, he was shocked. Torai asked in confusion what was wrong with that, also what would happen from it. Atsuya said that if he left her alive, the orcs would continue to reproduce. AI confirmed this and said that queens live for about 40 years. It is said that during this time she gives birth to hundreds of children. 5 of them are girls and they give birth to hundreds and thousands more. After that, there was silence on the balcony. Atsuya noticed that AI really knew a lot about orcs. The girl said that she read about it in a book they import, all about orcs. Atsuya asked what else the book said. AI hesitated and said it was in the orc language. The boy was surprised that she knew it. With obvious embarrassment on her face, AI looked away and said she could easily remember a few words. She added that this would be enough to attract the orc's attention. Memories of her and her sister laughing loudly when they discovered what one of the phrases meant to the orcs immediately came to mind. AI burst into laughter and said that she didn't think she would ever be able to say that. Meanwhile, on board the ship with the children and women, there was a slight panic because they saw that the village would soon be destroyed. They did not understand what had happened to the island or what kind of black bird it was. Suddenly, they saw a huge hand grab the ship. The queen snorted and remarked what a surprise it was. The people began to run into the house in panic, trying to hide. The queen laughed and said that they ran and hid here. She noted that they would just be a wonderful snack during their journey. She reached for the chain that ran from the ship into the water. She grabbed it and said that it looked like the disaster would soon wash away the entire island. She sighed, then quickly and carefully pulled out the anchor. She said that she had to get to her children. After that, she quickly redirected the ship back to the island. Suddenly on the way, this ship met a small boat. In it stood a confident Zanzil. The queen asked if the boy really wanted to fight her, after which she noted that he could barely stand on his feet. The boy jumped onto the ship, after which the queen asked him what he was doing. He held his two-handed sword in his hands and looked at her silently. The queen threateningly told him to say something, but Zanzil remained silent. At this time, the boys tried to go to the third operation. They were on the second floor of Kumamo Castle in the inner right corridor. The guy asked about the underground path that connects the castle to Wakadam Cave. After that, Torai said that they were amazing. Etsuya was silent. He thought about how easily Torai gave compliments because he could not do that. He wondered what the difference was between them, their communication skills, their respect for the interests of others. He thought that the difference was all of that. He thought about how he hadn't just changed. It didn't matter who he was or who he was with because he was always alone anyway. That was because he hated everyone, no matter how they treated him. Torai didn't hate Etsuya, but the boy was sure that he hated Torai himself. His problem was that he despised his own kind, but he lived by completely different rules. At that moment, Torai turned around and with a wide grin told the boys that they should do their best. Etsuya wondered if there was a possibility that he should acknowledge Torai for that. His face twisted and he decided to think about it later. Suddenly, they saw orcs in the corridor. At this time, AI was on the other side, asking Inosuke if he was ready. After receiving the answer, she took as much air as she could into her lungs and screamed in the orc language about her hairy legs. The monsters immediately turned to look at the girl. Red with shame and embarrassment, AI continued to shout this over and over again. Watching this, Torai couldn't help but laugh because in front of his eyes, a 25-year-old girl was shouting about this. Etsuya thought that Torai should shut up and focus. Noticing this, the orcs glanced at each other, but they quickly realized what was happening. They were afraid of traps, so they turned their attention to the left corridor. They did not leave the banquet hall. At that moment, the boys pushed away the cart they were using to go into battle. Etsuya held half of Torai's body while he was about to attack with his spear. When the orcs came to their senses and turned around, Torai was already very close. Etsuya threw his partner's body right at the orc, which increased Torai's speed. With a loud scream, Torai flew straight into the monster. At this time, Etsuya fell to the floor, but he was in no hurry to tear his gaze away from what was happening on the battlefield. Torai screamed loudly about his genitals, which were torn off along with his legs. With all his speed, he plunged his spear into the orc's head. Torai's weapon almost immediately passed through the monster, hitting everything it could. While the guy attacked the orc, he had a rather malicious grin on his face. He had clearly achieved his revenge. He screamed loudly that his genitals were a terabin that they couldn't take away from him. Torai smiled widely because he had achieved his goal and killed the monster. In the end, there were only 3 orcs left in the system, including the child.